Stand for the prayer. Today, as the session opens, we pray for your presence will be before us and for everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for your direction, which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day of wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councilor Conway.
Here.
Councilor Drinkwater.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Leahy.
Here.
Councilor Mercier.
Here.
Councilor Noon.
Here.
Councilor Rourke.
Here.
Councilor Samaras.
Here.
Councilor Chow.
Here.
9 present.
We have some memorials tonight. I'll go from end to end. Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It sent me to read this memorial on a good friend of mine, and his family is my family friend. They live across the street from me. So I would like to request a moment of silence on behalf of Kenneth Sau, who passed away very unexpectedly on Sunday, May 23rd, at the young age of 26 years. Born in Lowell in October 1994, he attended Lowell Public Schools and the Fenn School in Concord. He received his bachelor's degree in political science and legal studies from UMass Amherst. Kenneth is survived by his father, David Sau, mother, Ren Sau, sister, Ranaya Kun, Shayla Sau, Laura Sau, brothers Rocco Ray, Christopher Sau, Sean Sau, niece Deanna Jackson, and his loving girlfriend, Natalie New. Ken Sau was one of the most vibrant people. He loved Lowell and had faith in his city from his earliest years. He had one of the kindest hearts of all, and always supported and advanced his friends to the fullest. He was a true leader and an inspiration to many Khmer youth. He had even aspired to someday run for public office in this city. Kenneth was also a young entrepreneur. He and a friend started their own brand of clothing called Lotus, L-O-T-U-S. He always encouraged other youth to use their time productively and to give back to their community. He always guided his friends and large family to see the large picture and the reality of things the way they really were. From his business, his sporting events, to the champion Angkorian Warriors rowing team, which competed in the Southeast Asian water every year. He made sure everyone felt like family. His humor and kind-heartedness always brought people together. In the spirit of Kenneth, we will remember him with the saying of Carpe Diem, or seize the moment, which he carried tattooed on his arm. He will be greatly missed. His funeral service will be held this week. Friends and family members can pay their respects on Thursday at the Faye McCabe Funeral Home at 2 p.m. with a procession to the Glory Temple at 4:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to join Councilor Chow also for a moment of silence in darkened chambers for Kenneth Sau as well. I don't know Kenneth Sau that well. He died very young. But I do know his father, David Sau. Very involved, very active in the community, very caring, have done so much for Cambodian American here in Lowell and abroad. Building well, building school, all those stuff. So Kenneth, from the sound of Councilor Chow mentioned, take after his father, the loving and kindness that his father instilled in him and all his sibling. So may he rests in peace.
Thank you. Counselor Elliott?
Mr. Mayor, just briefly, the Councilor Noon was really said exactly what I was going to. I didn't know his son very well, but I do know David Rittisau, and he and his family, our heart goes out to him. His family meant and means everything to Ritti, and he was a very generous man. The second time to Cambodia, he sent over with us. Just a generous person and family. Loves his country, doesn't forget about those in need. And I just wanted to support those comments by Councilor Chow and Councilor Noon for this family. It's only 27 years old and it's devastating, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other memorials? I just have one from up here, if you don't mind. Like a moment of silence for Raymond Rochette, native of Lowell, Mass., passed away May 20th, 2021 after brief illness. Raymond was the son of Ekachis and Thomas Rochette. He moved to Wyndham in 2004. Raymond was happily married for 43 years to Frances Morrison Rochette, who passed away in 2004. Ray served his country honorably in the United States Navy during World War II. He retired in 1995 after working many years for the city of Lowell as a heavy equipment operator. He'll be sadly missed, so I'd just like to honor Ray. Sure, Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber to all those that have passed on since our last council meeting. They will be truly missed. Thank you.
Thank you. We could dim the lights. Thank you. Mayor's business, 2-1, communication, remote and Zoom participation. Need a motion to accept and place on file by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Chow. City clerk portion, 3-1. Need a motion to accept the minutes of the city council regular meeting, May 11th for acceptance. Motion by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Rourke. Getting into communications by the city manager, 6-1. Motion response A, Old Ferry Road. I believe that's,
There is a registered speaker on this.
okay. Why don't we go to the registered speakers first?
Zany Duffy.
Getting into communications. 1.
Can I start
Motion.
talking?
Yep, you're all set. Yeah, just state your name and your address for the record, and then you have 5 minutes.
There is a registered speaker on this.
Okay. Why don't we go to the register? Turn your TV down. Okay, you're all set whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm good to go?
Yes, yep.
Okay, cool. Well, while I have the floor, and since we just finished up on memorials, I just wanted to bring attention to and maybe we can have a little moment of silence for Moses Harris and his family.
If we have to stick to the agenda.
Yeah.
You're
Okay,
speaking on
yeah.
the ordinance, yeah, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, this actually happens to be the anniversary of George Floyd's death, which I think is ironic, given that the Lowell Police Department.
But we're speaking on the motion.
I'm gonna release him back to the
Mr. Mayor.
room.
Do you have it?
Can I keep going? Yeah, so the family deserves.
He's done. All right, there was another registered speaker. Hang on. Corbin Swain. They mustn't be there, just move on.
Okay, so we'll go to Councilor Elliott. Any questions on the response?
Yeah, no questions. Thank you for the response on the motion, Madam Mayor. I understand that the appeal that was filed still rests with DEP. I also, part of that was a 6-month traffic analysis. A lot of information. I think this is important. I'd like to refer this to the Transportation Subcommittee for discussion. Part of the development project did include, at the request of the neighborhood organization, to have a traffic evaluation. The information and data has been included. Of course, the impact of COVID it is discussed in this report, so I'd like to, if there's no objection, refer this to the Traffic Subcommittee for further discussion with the information that was provided by VHB.
Okay, motion by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Noon to send this to Subcommittee, Transportation Subcommittee. All those in favor say aye.
Can I just ask, Mr.
Sure.
Mayor, one question? So the appeal still rests with DEP. Is it expected, as your best guess, Madam Manager, that will be released, or it'll be a decision will be made sometime soon?
Well, we're hopeful that it
Right.
is, because we did file, as the response said, and addressing the issues and concerns that render the need to affect the property in question moot. And
Right.
so it seemed to address what was necessary. So we're hopeful there can be a quick resolution from DEP. I don't know whether they're in full-time or if they're remote, but we'll follow up with them as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Any questions on motion response B, Councilor Elliott?
There's a registered speaker there.
Okay, thank you.
Deb Forgione.
I have nothing to say up to that, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just for the people at home, this was a request to have building plans put online at a request of a neighborhood organization. I think it makes sense, and the city is working to put them online. So I think during the time where people couldn't come down to City Hall, moving forward, they will be available online. So thank you for the report, Madam Manager. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on response C, crosswalks at Eagle Park? Councilor Drinkwater, any questions?
Just a speaker here as well.
There is? Let the speaker go.
I got a letter in. He was here. She was here. I don't see her in the meeting room anymore.
Okay, Councilor Drinkwater?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment. Thank you, Madam Manager, for getting a team out there to take a look at the intersections on West 6th in the area of Eagle Park. And it's great. A couple crosswalk signs will be added, as well as the stop sign on Hampshire Street. So I know you're continuing to have the team look for more traffic calming solutions at those intersections, but hopefully the signs and the stop signs will make an immediate impact. So thank you very much for the report and the action on it.
Thank you. Any questions on motion response D? reporting hate crimes. Counselor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Madam Managers and Chief Richardson for the report. I know the report identify a couple way, traditional way of reporting hate crime or any crime. I also noticed that, and I'm glad to see that the department working on, creating a page on their website. But also at the same time, I also urge that the department look at, how other city and town outside doing in terms of, creating possible option for residents to report hate crime. So that's just, going forward, I hope that the department will look for way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Manager?
Thank you. Just briefly, Counselor, the police department is looking to do that and is exploring the option of in people having the ability in multiple languages to report crimes, but confidentially, just to assure confidentiality in the process. So we're working on that, and we will come forward with an update.
Counselor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On that note, that the manager mentioned, is that also the multi-language, is that also on the citizen complaint as well?
Yes, it is.
Has it,
Yeah.
But it's not online yet, is that correct?
I believe it's in the process.
Right.
We do have the translations. I'd have to check and see if it's updated, but that too will be in multiple languages.
Because I know that at least a group of students from daily school working
Correct.
do the petition, and they're trying to get the police department, having a citizen complaint in multi-language, and so, I'm just thank them.
As soon as that is online in multiple languages, we'll not only tell the council, but we'll tell the students at the daily school so that they know, Counselor.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Motion response E, Lowell High project. Counselor Mercy, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My response is, first off, I want to thank you, Madam Manager, for the response. What I do know that wasn't in the report was that 2 towns rejected the bids of these companies, namely Sharon and Arlington. And I just have the woman's intuition that this company taking a $10 million reduction, and who doesn't want to save money? I just hope that the red flag that I feel that just went up is not that this company's going to skimp because of the $10 million. That's all I'm asking, is that they're watched very carefully. We do have a clerk in the works that does that, right?
We do, and we also, Counselor, have, and I think we gave an update, we have a very strict safety plan and someone on site all the time, and that includes a full-time safety officer who will be on site performing daily inspections, health, safety, welfare. That is all part of our process, so there will be no allowing anybody to cut corners or to do anything along that line.
I have no vendetta in this case. I don't actually know the company, but when people come to me and they say, we smell something wrong here, I'm not going to just sit here and not acknowledge it. And this is the point of the motion, because I think that bidders should be truthful when they present their record. And there was a gross omission. If you read, of course, in the paper today, I knew that, but there's only certain things I could say. I don't want to open up this city for a possible lawsuit, but a word of caution, and that's all I'm doing with this motion. Thank you very much.
Madam Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Counselor, and we did file a response and an updated one today. We did meet again to review everything, as I said, our project team, who has evaluated the bids, is confident that this is appropriate, that the company in question has not been cited as negligent in connection with this death, although it's tragic. And I also wanted to, and I appreciate the information that's come forward, and we do take it seriously. We do look at everything. But we do have trusted consultants whose job it is to do this, and they have not just once or twice, but 3 or 4 times now have said this is an appropriate selection. I do know that they have worked on other projects, including school projects, with actually every one of our consultants, and have had a very good experience. So your words are well taken. We will make certain we are watching every single aspect of every contractor and subcontractor on this project.
And if you realize a $10 million difference between the next bidder, I don't want them to try to make it up somehow. Do you know what I'm saying?
And that's part of the vetting process, because our experts, including Skanska, Perkins Eastman, and Suffolk, are well versed in what bids are reasonable, what aren't, and so that is part of their, what they look at to say, does this make sense? There were only 2 bids, and so wide apart.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Manager.
Councilor Drinkwater?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, you know, I know we have the information on our desks, you know, stating that, you know, the company wasn't negligent in the incident. That's included in the report. You know, when the incident first came to my attention, it wasn't so much the fact that a fatality had occurred that rang alarm bells, because, again, you know, construction's a dangerous industry. The mechanical trades, plumbing and pipe fitting, they're dangerous jobs. And, you know, accidents can and do happen. It was the omission of the information on the original bidding documents that I think raised alarm bells, just because, you know, whether there was, you know, negligence or not, whether it could have been prevented or not, these incidents just should be disclosed so that they can be reviewed and considered by any awarding authority. So it's really not about beating up any one company over one incident or the fact that a fatality occurred. I guess what concerned me, both initially and sort of in the information that the company had provided as an addendum to the docs, was that they continued to state that the incident was unrelated to the workplace. And, you know, they had produced evidence from you know, a denial from a comp insurance company for the initial survivor benefits claims, when there was also information out there, you know, from OSHA, who had investigated the incident, you know, considered it to be a workplace fatality. You know, also information from the Department of Industrial Accidents, where ultimately it was considered to be workplace related, and you know, the family ended up receiving survivor benefits. So it was really, I think, just the idea that there was a continuing narrative that it wasn't workplace related, you know, and I just think, you know, workers, when they do lose their life on the job, they should just be afforded, you know, some modicum, I think, of dignity and respect for the sacrifice. You know, if they're going out, they're trying to provide for their families. They oftentimes choose to take dangerous work and take risks, and you know, sometimes they lose their life in dangerous industries. So, you know, to have a company consistently produce information saying that, you know, it wasn't related to the workplace, that, you know, they were turning a bolt and had a heart attack, it kind of sounds like, you know, they were fixing a kitchen faucet, when the actual, you know, scenario involved, you know, scalding water and steam, and that had been treated with chemicals, and you know, it was an occupational incident that had majorly contributed to the death. So again, you know, I don't think an accident such as that is necessarily a disqualifying event per se for a contractor, but I think when continuously the, you know, information isn't provided at first, and then information is provided and it doesn't really represent the totality of what happened, I just think you know, it calls into question, you know, the overall honesty of the bid. So, you know, I think at the end of the day, you know, we've received updated information. You know, it was work-related. The company wasn't negligent. I don't know that it was ever necessarily presumed that they were, but I do think at the very least, you know, the worker in question, Mr. McPherson, who actually happened to be born here and grew up here and lived for much of his life in the area in Tewksbury, it just should be recognized that this is someone who spent a career in the industrial plumbing industry, doing dangerous work, ultimately, suffered an accident, and lost his life while trying to provide, and we should be recognizing that. He should be afforded the respect of recognizing that, rather than have it messaged that he was kind of turning a bolt and had a heart attack. So I just wanted to make sure that information got out there. I think it's important that ultimately all of this does get reviewed. It seems like initially the information that was being relied upon, that was provided by the company, wasn't everything. And now it seems that everything is out there. It's all being considered, and I just hope that before any decisions are made, all of that can be taken into account as to whether this company is in fact a responsible contractor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Manager.
Thank you. I just want to be,
Hello, can you hear me?
hold on. Is there someone else speaking? I just, want to be clear for the record that our consultants who have been hired to vet these issues have made it clear to the city that the disclosure form was amended prior to the bidding. It did disclose that there was a death on the job, and it did disclose that there was an OSHA citation, but there was no admission or finding of negligence or liability. So those were the salient factors, according to our consultants, that the death was not the result of the negligence of the contractor or caused by the negligence or direct safety violations. Those, as it was explained to the city. And again, tragic event for this gentleman to have lost his life.
If Moses don't get justice, then you don't get no peace.
So I just wanted to be cleared. So it was not a situation that our consultants didn't look at this prior to the bids. They did. They had that, and they also looked at additional information. So again, our condolences and sympathy to the gentleman, and I agree with you, who lost his life. But the distinction or the difference is there was no finding that that loss of life was the direct result of the negligence of the company or was the direct result of safety violations by the company. And that's very important. So I just wanted to clear the record.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Samaras?
Thank you. Madam Manager, just for the record, when we did the tree topping at the high school, Mr. McCarthy from the MSBA was present, correct?
Yes, Jack McCarthy, the executive director.
And the thing is, we've gone through a long session with the MSBA to do this project right. And one thing that I was pleased with Mr. McCarthy is when he said the three companies basically that Lowell has, Perkins East, Skanska, and Suffolk, meet all of the standards, have met all of the standards that the MSBA has had in a number of their projects, and that Lowell should be proud of what they've done. And I was on the original screening team for Perkins Eastman and Skanska, which really are the ones that do the vetting out of all of these projects. And I don't see any one of these companies jeopardizing their future by taking in a company that could not carry out the particular job that we're talking about. So the thing is, I think it's important for people to know that we do have three major companies that deal with this type of size commitment, and the MSBA, which is our primary funder for all of this, is completely supportive of the way we've handled this and what's presently going on. And I see this, the death of the gentleman, always unfortunate. But I'm satisfied at this particular point that we have a company, and that the companies that we have who are responsible for the safety of everyone will do it and do it right. I can assume that, as you said, we have, well, this may not be a complete union job, but many of the requirements that the union requires, safety officers, the issue of trainees, bringing more women into the profession, more people of color into the profession. These are all things that we have handled with this particular operation. Am I correct or not?
That is correct, Counselor.
Okay. I just want to paint out, because sometimes a picture can be painted that people will look and say, wait a second, what's going on? But I think what's going on here is that we have programs that have been vetted out properly, and the issue is we want this high school to be built. I mean, if anybody here wants this high school to be built, I can make some claims to this. It's important. It's important it's done right. It's important that we have the money to complete this project. And by doing this properly, I feel secure that we will meet all those needs. Thank you.
Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I was there too at the topping, and I too heard Mr. McCarthy congratulate us for the consultant team that we have. When we hired the consultant team, all of us vote to support that consultant team. It sounds like, I mean, from the look, Suffolk, Skanka. They're, you know, a great team, and you know, soon as we learn of the motion filed by Councillor Mercier, I know that. I just want to know, as soon as you heard that, Madam Manager, did you reach out to our consultant team and the project team to see if they can reach out to the Attorney General office asking them to weigh in on this matter?
Yeah, as I said in the initial response, that our project team, in addition to looking at it, did reach out to the Attorney General's office about the process here, who basically said it's perfectly legitimate and it's up to the city to make the decision. But there was not a disqualifying event.
Would you also address the concern that about disclosure? You said that disclosure was done prior to the bidding. Is that correct?
Yes, Councillor. So there's a timeline that Jim Dowd of Skanska provided, and that's part of the initial response. And if you look at the timeline, there was a response. It's a statement of qualifications that was filed, I believe, in November of 2020. It was then amended in January of 2021 to include the language that I referred to, which is there was a death. It corrected a question on the first answer where it was asked, was there a death on the job? I don't have the exact question. They had answered no. They amended it to say there was a death, and they also amended it to include about an OSHA citation in connection with it without admission of liability by Harold Brothers. That was prior to, and it explained who the individual was and that he died. But that was prior to the bid being awarded, or prior to the, let me look at the timeline. I want to make sure I have the date correct here. So that was, the pre-qualification committee reviewed that amended, updated statement and deemed that Harold Brothers, they had pre-qualified them.
Yeah.
And then they reviewed their amended statement of qualification, and they deemed them to still be pre-qualified for both plumbing and HVAC. They notified Harold Brothers that they remained pre-qualified. And then that was in January of 2021, and in April 21st, 2021, they submitted bids. Harold Brothers submitted bids for both plumbing and HVAC. So that was about 2 or 3 months after.
Did any of our consultants, beside the Lowell High School project, has been working with the Harold Brother? The Lowell High School project?
Each one has had experience working with Harold Brothers on various projects, including school building projects. So that included Skanska, Perkins, and Suffolk. In the past,
Okay, in the past, there's nothing currently. Besides-
Actually, there may be one project that's currently ongoing,
Okay.
one of the high school projects, I believe.
And they said to you that they have confidence.
They have
Harold Brothers.
complete confidence. They've had good experience working with, every one of them has had a good experience working with Harold Brothers on these school building projects.
Thank you, Madam Manager.
Councilor Elliott?
Thank you. You know, rather than rely on speculation, I applaud the maker of the motion for bringing this forward. You got the information, it's been thoroughly vetted, and I think this just is another step towards transparency, so we let people know, especially the taxpayers, that yes, there was a discrepancy, has been rectified. It's a tragedy. However, first and foremost, it's an important project. And secondly, we got to protect the taxpayers of almost $10 million. So it's been resolved. I think it's important to bring this out in the open and get answers, direct answers, which we did. So, you know, moving forward, this is a big project, not just these subs either. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Being after 7 o'clock, we'll go into the public hearings.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Just quickly, on the motion responses, I know this is not on the response, but if I just have a quick personal point of privilege to address the manager.
Yep, motion for the purpose of...
Yeah. So just what happened was last week, I got a couple of phone calls concerning the flags in downtown Lowell. A lot of them were weathered and tethered and things like that. So I did reach out to the manager with the concern, and I did see yesterday and today that, Madam Manager, new flags are going up for the Memorial Day weekend.
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Christine Clancy, Commissioner, said DPW is in the process. They will replace these flags with new flags. They purchased new flags, and it will be done before Memorial Day. So hopefully the crew will finish either Thursday or Friday of this week.
Thank you. The reason why I brought up Mr. Mayor is because obviously the next meeting is up for a couple of weeks, and the Memorial Day weekend is this weekend. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll get into public hearings. 4.1 ordinance, create a new chapter 222 entitled Murals. Open up the public hearing for all those in favor. We have 2 registered speakers.
Yeah, but I don't see them on the list, so move forward.
Okay,
They're not on the meeting.
all right. Anyone else in favor? In favor, that portion is closed. Open up to anybody in opposition. Opposition? Opposition, that portion is closed. Any discussion or any questions? We have Christine.
Move to approve.
Okay, motion by Councilor Elliott to approve, seconded by Councilor Rourke. Roll call.
Counsel Conway.
Yes.
Counsel Drinkwater.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Chow.
Yes.
9 yeas.
5.1, utility public hearing, National Grid, Verizon New England requests relocation of a pole at 6169 Rock Street. Open up the hearing to all those in favor. We have 2 registered speakers.
Yeah, they're joining right now. Michael Menendez. It's connecting. Michael,
Yep, yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead. You're all set.
Okay, thank you. Michael Benitez, representing National Grid, 1101 Turnpike Street, North Andover. This is a request from the builder over at 71 Rock Street to relocate a pole that is interfering with the new driveway that will be used for the new townhouses going in.
Okay.
is a Benjamin Wilson.
I don't have the builder's name in front of me. 1 second.
It's Benjamin Wilson.
I was in. Oh, sorry. I was in contact with Dean Jenkins. That was my contact.
Yeah, we have Benjamin Wilson registered to speak.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Are you all set, Benjamin?
Mr. Mayor, is there a problem with the Zoom function? Because I'm getting text people, are they, they're in, or they,
Yeah, well, a lot of people haven't registered, Council, and we've had a couple come in and just bombing the place in terms of protesting.
oh, yeah, no, I agree, but there's some others that got kicked out and they can't get in.
Yeah,
I keep the protesters out, I get.
when
Okay.
you're out, you're out.
All right, thanks.
Okay, he's not.
Benjamin, I mean, it was, all right, Susan Griffin?
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Hi, you're all set, Benjamin.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Benny Wilson, and I had some concerns about that location in Rockwall. My number one concern is, why are we talking about that when Moses Harris's family does not have the full
Okay,
unredacted?
thank you. We're talking about an ordinance.
This is Susan Griffin from National Grid.
Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. Can everyone hear me?
Sure, go ahead, Susan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, Susan Griffin here, Community Market Specialist with National Grid. I actually don't have anything I want to weigh in on now that I've spoken with my team, but one thing that I do want to say is that you need to release the police report about Moses Harris to his family.
All right, we're all set with the registered speakers. All right, that portion is closed. Anybody in opposition? Yep, Madam Manager.
I feel that I need to make this clear to the council. A week ago Friday, through the authorization of District Attorney Marion Ryan, all police reports were released to the Moses Harris, directly to Moses Harris's family. So I'm not quite clear whether these people who are trying to disrupt the council meeting have any communication with the family, but they are in receipt of all police reports from the Lowell Police Department.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? That portion is closed. Need a motion to refer to the wire inspector for report and
So moved.
recommendation by, who said that? Council Rourke, second by Council Samaras. All right, Madam Manager, back to the informational reports.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just through you to the council, next on the agenda is the presentation of our fiscal year 2022 budget. And just I'm going to ask our CFO, Connor Baldwin, and Deputy CFO, Allison Chambers, to speak to and give a highlight of the budget for the council. But I just wanted to make a few points prior to doing that. First, I want to, let the council know that, the city has been maintaining fiscal discipline throughout FY 2021, and we used CARES money, as you all know, to address COVID. In addition, we were able to maintain our strong fiscal controls and have continued to do that throughout the pandemic. That resulted in a tight budget, constant monitoring by our finance team, and honestly, every department has been very cooperative in that regard. And so now with the fiscal year 2022 budget, we're turning our attention to picking up where we left off before the pandemic struck. Our FY 2021 free cash, as I think it was last meeting we discussed, has been certified by the Commonwealth at $3.9 million. Currently, our stabilization fund balance is at its highest point, I believe, in history, if not in many years, $12.85 million. We've been able to maintain that stabilization balance. The FY22 budget spending plan presented tonight represents a budget of $464.2 million. These are targeted investments in key city services in all funds. And in addition, you will be presented with a loan order for $13.7 million, and that's to fund the capital plan for FY22. And the plan is included. Both of these, we know, will be referred to a public hearing on June 8th. I just want to tell the council that this budget, FY22, is a balanced budget in accordance with the law, as we're required to do. But I also want to share that getting there was not the easiest path, and we faced a number of challenges. In early February, actually going back in January, the finance department requests from all of our department heads their submissions, and we received the submissions of the requests from our departments, and after receiving those, our deficit at that point was $15.9 million. So to close the deficit, the finance team worked very closely and met with every department head to try and close that gap. Again, a big undertaking, but what you have in front of you is a budget that we believe is fair, addresses the needs of the city, addresses the services required, but does it in a balanced way. I also want to just say a couple of things about the American Rescue Plan Act. And the reason I want to mention it now is I think there's a few motions that have been on, and there's going to be a few motions tonight about that, and lots of interest, naturally, in what that is and what it will present for the city. The FY22 budget, however, is balanced without using any of the federal stimulus dollars. I want that to be clear. This budget before you is not relying on or using in any way that money. How much is the city slated to receive in federal stimulus money? Right now, it looks like about $76.8 million. And this includes not just the city allocation under the American Rescue Plan, but also because we're part of a county that is no longer operational, Middlesex County, we receive a portion there, and so that's about a portion. So it's 55 or so million from our city allocation, 21 and change from the county allocation. So as I mentioned, this is not in the budget before you. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Let me state some of that. First of all, guidance is only just now coming out from Treasury Department as to how these monies can be spent. And we're still vetting that. The state's actually receiving quite a large chunk of money, $5.4 billion under this, and for the same types of uses. And so we will be working not just on the city level, but with our state partners as to what type of monies may be available for a number of things. We need to formulate a roadmap for this spending because, as I think everybody recognizes, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the city of Lowell and for most communities who are receiving this kind of funding from the federal government. So a couple of points to make. The initial guidelines from the Treasury Department around the ARPA, or American Rescue Plan, say some things that you cannot use the money for. And let me suggest what that is. Something that you can't use it is for tax relief, direct payments into reserves. These, it appears at this stage, are ineligible uses of the federal stimulus money. The rationale is that contributions to rainy day funds and similar financial services would not address the needs or respond to the COVID-19 public health emergency, but would rather constitute savings for the future spending. And so that's one of the interim rules that we've received. We can recover lost revenue that is a direct result of COVID. But this is a long process. On one of the calls that we were on with the Department of Revenue, they basically said, be prepared to be involved with carefully planning, distributing, monitoring these funds between the time we receive it up to 2027. So this is a long haul and a long process, and very strict requirements around, as I said, not just expenditure, but accounting to the federal government for it. And so we're excited about the opportunity, and I know there's motions. We'll talk about that. We'll engage with all of the stakeholders around this. But because of all those factors, we're not counting, we're not banking on it in order to address the budget before you tonight. That will all come in the months and actually years coming forward as far as developing a spending plan that's in the best interest of the city. I just want to close by stating that every year we have to continue to monitor our budget on a daily basis. Every day we look at what's being spent. Every day we continue to try and strategize if there's reserves being used. Do we have to use them? Should we look to free cash once it's certified? I cannot say enough about certainly the finance team, and I'll speak to them later on, but our department heads who've been through a tough 15 months like everybody else in the world, and they've hung in there, their employees for their work and dedication, knowing that this has been a tough time on all levels. And so, I'm happy to have the presentation to you tonight and obviously we'll have a public hearing in 2 weeks, but with that said, I'll turn it over to Connor for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Manager. So I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about the process. As the manager mentioned, back in January of calendar year 2021, the request went out to all of the department heads for their request for the FY22 budget. We began our spending plan based on the numbers that were released as part of the governor's 2022 state budget. As the council is well aware, the city's revenue stream is about 2/3 of intergovernmental revenue, Chapter 70 unrestricted aid. So we must watch closely what comes from the state in order to match that with our spending plan. As we moved through February and March, we sat down with each department head this year via Zoom to discuss our revised budget with them to fit that within our spending ability. And as the manager mentioned, we had to cut about $15.9 million out of the budget to get to the balanced budget that is before you this evening. In April, the House and the Senate arrived at a number for local aid. That is the number we have included as the intergovernmental estimate within the budget. And so from here on out, as the manager mentioned, the City Council tonight has their budget books in front of them. We will be putting the budget plan, and all of the relevant information on the city website for the public to review. And then we will be holding a public hearing on June the 8th to answer any questions and to hear from the public about the FY22 budget, the capital plan, the ordinances that are part and parcel of the budget, and then the effective date of the FY22 budget is July 1st. So I just want to talk for a minute about some of our major challenges in FY22 in a little bit more detail. As we talk about each year during the budget process, the fixed costs eat up a lot of our revenue right off the bat when we begin the budget. Namely, this year, they're very much the same as they are each year. $1.4 million increase to the city's pension assessment over FY21. Just under $5 million in the aggregate increase in the cherry sheet charges. Cherry sheet is the name we use for those state assessments that come on the other side of the cherry sheet. The lion's share of that number is comprised of the increase in the charter school assessment. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that in just a moment. We also saw, and we've talked a lot about this in this council chamber over the last several months, $1 million increase in the budgeted amount for trash and recycle. This continues to be a major fiscal challenge for the city. This is as a result of the current contract with Waste Management. It is driven in part because of the contractual increases that are part of the contract, but also by the contaminated recycling charges, which are driven by the behavior of the residents in a way. So the more the contamination that's included in that recycling stream, the more the cost on the city for disposing of that. Other fixed costs are the same as they normally are: health insurance, electricity, salary increases, and other debt service associated with the city's aggressive capital plan. Next slide, please. So to talk about the charter school impact in a little more detail, there's a chart on the screen and that the folks at home should be able to see on their television that highlights the year-over-year charter school assessment. So the very bottom line on this chart, which is the net increase year over year, if you look at the very bottom right of the chart, FY22 over FY21, there's a $2.2 million increase. Now, as part of the Student Opportunity Act, there was a significant increase in the charter school assessment, so the charter school reimbursement, so the assessment was offset in part. However, you can see that in 21, the assessment went from $27.5 million to $32.2 million, and the reimbursement matched by about $2 million. However, the net increase over last year was about $2.2 million. Next slide, please.
Thank you. I did want to point out a couple of highlights in this budget before you. First of all, we did a lot of work in this past year around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and one of the major things supported by this council was an audit looking at our departments and our HR department as well. We're waiting for that audit to conclude, which will be very soon. But one of the things that we did is we're continuing to fund that. And we're funding a new position in advance of the report, and that position is in the budget. We will, when appropriate, we'll bring the ordinance before you. But rather than do an ordinance now and describe the duties and responsibilities, we thought it prudent to wait for the work that the company has been doing, and so, but we wanted to make sure there was funding in the budget for this, whether it's called a diversity officer, a diversity, inclusion, and equity officer. But that's a new position that you will see funded in the budget. And as I said, we expect the details coming to us very shortly from the company that's been working for many, many weeks now on formulating the audit and report. The second initiative that I wanted to bring out, and I think we mentioned this, and it's a new position with the Lowell Fire Department. This is for a grant writer to research and apply for existing federal, state, and private grants, and to supplement the fire department budget for staffing, equipment, and costs. The police department has a terrific grant writer, Mary Ann Manzi, and her team, and they also help out fire when they can. But this was an initiative in connection with our conversations with the e-board of the fire department that they brought forward, and they suggested that they felt very strongly that, this would be something that may well pay for itself and then some. And we looked at that and agreed that it's certainly something, and so you will see that as a new position in the budget, and I think one that we highly recommend to the council. The next item is investing in recreation. As we all know, the past year has been terrible for kids who have probably borne the brunt of the pandemic more than most. Last summer, given the situation with COVID, we weren't able to have a recreation program, and we wanted to make certain that we did everything we could for kids in the city of Lowell this summer so that we fully fund bringing back summer programming to the maximum capacity, to bring back normalcy and ensure a summer of fun for camps. We're trying to open the pools, hiring lifeguards. We would love to have a summer of normality back for the kids. We've also reached out to the Lowell School Department because they expect to have a robust summer school program, and we're trying to partner with them so that kids who may be in summer school in the morning can partake in our recreation programs in the afternoon at these school sites across the city. So that's a work in progress. Peter Fataconti is working closely with the school department, but we felt it was just so important for kids to have the opportunity to enjoy summer. Investing in education, I think Connor may have touched. Actually, I'm going to let him talk about the next page of highlights and initiatives that include capital investments in municipal services.
Thank you. So the investment in education, the amounts included in the FY22 budget continue the commitment of this city council to meet and exceed the city's net school spending and requirement. So as we discussed recently, the city in FY20 exceeded the net school spending by $7.3 million. There's a chart that you'll see in a moment about how the city has stacked up against other gateway communities, and this council is to be applauded for the continued investment in the Lowell public school system. This budget continues that commitment. The capital investments that are part of the loan order and the comprehensive 5-year capital plan continue to make targeted investments in the city's infrastructure. We are continuing our policy of maximizing state and federal grants with city bond proceeds to better use city dollars to maximize projects. You see examples of this all across the city. The most notable that we've seen year over year being the city's investment of capital to match the Chapter 90 program to pave our roads. So there's $3 million in the capital plan to match the $1.8 million in Chapter 90 to continue to address the city streets, to make investments in streets, sidewalks, curbing, etc. And then finally, the funding plan included in the FY22 budget continues to realign municipal services for a more streamlined customer service and a better result for our residents. The fire prevention co-locating with the police in the old health department facility on Pine Street, and then the health department moved to downtown to 107 Merrimack Street. These are strategies that are all supported by the FY22 budget.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Connor. Are we using the Oakland Fire Station at all? I thought we were using fire prevention up there. They're moving to the health department, so where does that leave us with the Oakland Fire Station?
Yeah, so the Mammoth Road Fire Prevention moved to Pine Street.
Mm-hmm.
Fire training and safety, fire training is still at Oakland, hasn't moved there yet. Right now, there hasn't been a decision as far as moving that. So right now, it's still the fire department.
Thank you.
But the police is what Connor's referring. We're going to be moving out of the Boys Club substation because of their project. And so the substation for the Highlands will be at Pine Street. They're going to coexist. They're being co-located to have police and fire at the old health center.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin.
I'm going to turn it over to Deputy CFO Allison Chambers to talk about the net school spending requirement as well as the detailed financing plan that the public can find in the budget document.
Thank you. So what you're looking at here, this slide, is just a visual representation of our commitment to our schools. The certified net school spending number for fiscal 20 was 7.3 over the required amount. And you can see compared to other gateway cities, we far exceed what's expected of us and far exceed what some of our fellow gateway cities are able to do. So we're really proud of that number. This next slide that you see is our revenue by source. So earlier, the city manager presented a $464.2 million operating budget to you. I think one of the most important things to talk about is the tax levy. So that is represented by the blue in this chart, and The tax levy is really a third of the budget. It says 37% here because this includes all taxes, excise taxes, but where Lowell is unique, most communities are dependent on their tax levy being about 2/3 of their budget, but for Lowell, it's about 1/3. And then if you look over here in the, I guess, orange color, the revenue that we get from local aid is 40% of our budget, and that's $178 million of Chapter 70 money, which supports our schools, and another 27.7, which of unrestricted general government aid, which supports the city. And then finally, the smaller pieces of the pie, but no less important, are our charges for our services, which those are mostly our enterprise revenues, the water, sewer, and parking revenues, licenses and permits, and other miscellaneous revenues. And these funds in particular were a challenge in fiscal 2021 as impacted by COVID, and keeping that in mind and not knowing what was in store with us with the recession and COVID being an ongoing problem, we teamed up with the Collins Center to look at our fiscal 22 revenues, how the recession would impact fiscal 22, but also our 5-year plan, you know, to look forward and try to really reflect the impact of COVID. And then finally, matched by our revenues are our appropriations by categories. And these figures will represent the appropriation order, that will be presented to you. The biggest category is the blue, and that is our commitment to schools and education. And it almost mirrors the allocation in local aid for the Chapter 70 money. It's about 45% of the pie. Other categories, it's followed by our general government. That's kind of all our back office departments and fixed costs. Public safety and public works are both in the $51 million area. Debt service is the purple piece, and then we have human services, culture, and recreation. This is just giving the big picture beyond the slide and the appropriation. In the content of the budget book, there's a lot of great information, but there's a detailed breakdown of how all the departments spend their money. And even further, like I said, budget document really is a wealth of information if you want to kind of get knee deep in the city finances, but it's a public document. It's a roadmap for the city's current year fiscal plan, but also forecast our finances out for 5 years. And our hope is that the information can provide the public with the comfort knowing how and where all city money comes from and how we plan to spend it. So I will end with that, and if there's any comments or questions.
Councilor Mercier?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm concerned, maybe I'm wrong, but so help me out with this. When you look at the previous page and you see local aid being $170 million from Chapter 70 monies, and then you turn the page and you see in blue the school, the appropriation for the school, which is $208 million, are we then subtracting the $170 million that were received from Chapter 70 money? How are we doing this?
Sure, Mr. Baldwin.
So the way to look at the chart, the education piece of the pie is, it also includes the assessment for the Greater Lowell Technical High School as part of the education category. But the financing plan for the Lowell Public School Department is a little more complicated than just the pie. And by that I mean there is two components. There's the Chapter 70, which is about $170 million, and then there is a direct tax levy support of about $15 million from the tax levy. In addition to that is all of the city appropriations that go towards the support of the schools, which we affectionately know as maintenance of effort. Altogether, that is where you get the net school spending total, which is about $230 million approximately. So there's a few different ways to look at the spending on the schools. What's included in the chart as part of this presentation was the direct appropriation number. So that includes the $174 million for the schools plus the $10 million for the Greater Lowell Technical High School, as well as the charges for electricity, which are included in the city manager's office, but support the schools. Sorry for the complicated answer.
It
to your
is,
question.
it is, but that's okay. I kind of get what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Samaras?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager, Connor Baldwin. Really, how do we thank you for this report? Of course, when we go through this rather thick budget book, we'll know, some specifics. But I think it's going to be a while before our constituents really understand what you've done. Because basically, when you looked at this budget, when I was asking questions about this budget, I was informed that it was balanced, not using rescue money. What you've really done for us is you've given us a budget that we can work with, but you've also given us a future. It's the way I see it, because now we're going to be asking people for their input. Your departments are going to be looking for, to give you their input. But the thing is, and you did talk about some of the questions we've asked for later on. It wasn't me. Well, that keeps everybody awake. I think we're all right now.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead. Yep.
the issue is that you put us into a good place, and as I said, the way I look at this budget is going to create a future for us, and I think that's what's important. I think that's what we're all looking for. We just came out of a pandemic, and in my history in this city, I've seen literally every budget since Proposition 2.5. I've seen the 2.5 and other budgets during shortfall where we couldn't make the budget and many serious cuts had to be made. And you really could have put us into a position, even now, had this money not been watched so carefully. At the same time we getting rescue money, we'd be trying to repair the budget. We're not. So I want to thank the both of you. I want to thank all of you for this. I do have a concern. As I look at the school budget, they've already put a serious amount of their money, rescue money, in positions for next year. And the question is, when this money does basically go away or is used, how are they going to deal with this? And I might, at some point ask the finance committee that's been meeting with the finance committee from the school committee address some of these issues. So I'm a little concerned. We have one department, the city side, I think making very positive steps that going to allow us to have a future. The question is, I don't want that future hampered by having to pay for some issues that are raised later on. I mean, it's subjective on my part, but it's subjective based on a lot of years of knowledge of how these budgets work. And I have a concern in that area. But at this point, I just want to say thank you for giving us a future. I appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Conway?
I think Councilor Elliott was before me.
All right, why don't you go first, and then I'll call Councilor Elliott.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. I want to congratulate you, Madam Manager, and also to your congratulations to the financial team, Connor Baldwin and Allison Chambers. This, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of repetition here, but balancing a budget in these such very difficult times I would assume it was a Herculean task, and you people pulled it together, and I think that's so important, and certainly the people in the city of Lowell and we here in the chambers certainly appreciate the hard work and the effort that was put into it. Truly a team effort. Again, balancing the budget and keeping the services strong. I would assume that was a very, very difficult thing to do. and a lot of long hours putting that together. And yet we have the services, and the services were certainly needed for the city, and you spent the money as wisely as possible, and I think that's so very important. There's just a couple things I want to point out, because I know everybody wants to talk on this. The grant writer. Something like that's very dear to me, as you well know, Madam Manager, because you were part of that team years ago when I put that motion on for a grant writer. And I know people thought it was perhaps not the best thing to do. We put it on, and we did get that financed by the business community, but it brought in over $6 million additional monies to the school department. So again, I applaud you. It certainly has worked with the police department, and now I think bringing it to the fire department is certainly a very wise move. And the last thing I just want to mention too is the school department. I think we all know that the buildings were neglected for many, many years. And I think that we kicked the can down the road many, many times. And what you people did is you gathered your sources, you created quite the partnerships with the state. And if I recall that grant that we hadn't went after for many years, and I think that brought in, what was it, about $9 million or $8 million?
Just under 14.
Thank you. $14 million, and that covered the many of the roofs, I believe, and the heating systems and doors and windows, which was needed. And this is a grant that you can go after each and every year. So I think that is so very important. And again, just to education was so important to invest in it, and it's I know it's dear to your heart that we're going to address these buildings on a continuous basis, so which I think is so very important. So being able to juggle all this at once, again, I applaud you, Madam Manager, and the financial team for putting this together. Thank you very much.
Councilor Elliott, then Councilor Chow.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We didn't get here. It hasn't been easy to maintain our financial stability. And it's a good report. There's a lot of information. If people want to know anything that's going on in the city, this is our Bible. And I encourage people to look through it because it answers a lot of the questions we used to ask on the multi-days of the budget deliberations. You know, that being said, I think things are positive. I don't think by far, and Connor and the manager and Allison, no, we're not out of the water. I mean, we took some hits. Let's be very straight up during COVID. We had some significant revenue loss. That means we reduced our spending, but we still have a lot of work to do, without a doubt. And I know this number, this COVID number coming in seems large, and there's going to be a lot of need, and we have needs. There's going to be a lot of needs, a lot of asks. It's one-time money. So developing, programs over multi-year, I don't think that's the purpose, and there is some specific guidance, and I know that motions have already been referred to the Finance Subcommittee, have a discussion, and we're going to look to the administration to look, where are these holes, where are these revenue losses, where are these areas that we need to plug, water, wastewater, sewer, trash, and then go from there. I appreciate the investments that we continue to make in education. I'm not going to sound like a broken record about charter school reimbursement. It's not getting any better. And just to the people at home, there is a charge. There's an assessment that we get from the state. It's not the city's doing. We get a partial reimbursement of that, and then the city funds the rest. So when we look at any revenue that we have from taxes, called a levy, it gets gobbled up right off the bat. It's public education should be funded as such through Chapter 70. Sorry, you gave a good explanation on where, but it's significant. The numbers are multi-million every single year, and with class sizes growing, the state just needs to step up as they do for Chapter 70. And the city funds our public education on the school side, and now it's the charter side. But, so I look forward to the discussion at the Finance Subcommittee on this guidance as it gets more clear, and it's important. This budget addresses issues we hear in the community, the diversity officer, just alluded to by Council Conway, the grant writer, that's going to pay dividends. We know there's money out there. We know that we have applied, but we have to put someone specifically on there, and that'll pay for itself. So I don't see any frills in this budget. It does support the community. I like the fact that our parks in this city and across the state are being used more than ever. You know, the group of individuals that certainly has suffered has, you know, I like the fact that summer recreation, because kids want to go to the parks and they need to be constructive. So I look forward to discussion on the, you know, the public hearing, but I think job well done. It supports multi-initiatives across the city, still maintains a frugal nature in our spending. There's not loads of positions. We just talked about the ones that have been presented. They're minimal, they're integral, and I think that this is a good working document, a good solid financial plan that's going to maintain our stability and still move us forward. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with all the comments and the commendations the previous councilors mentioned. And that was a great presentation, a great tag team presentation by CFO and Madam Manager. A lot of numbers to crunch, a lot of main themes, a lot of the major challenges, items outlined. And needless to say, you know, it's just you doing everything right by the book. And we as councilors, we get to see these numbers and discuss with you on a weekly, if not a daily basis. But I would say probably the best compliments, probably I want to reiterate to Madam Manager when you came to visit the Highlands Neighborhood Group meeting. It was sort of a State of the City, State of the Union meeting. You made a few outlines on the challenges and what the city have done and so forth during the past year. And one of the member at the meeting complimented you, simply just said, you know, you've done a fantastic job during the ups and downs, the upheaval with the economics, the business, the social, the health. She said she didn't feel like she felt anything. Everything was smooth. It was normal to her, even though she hears and knows that other cities, other residents, other states, they were in upheaval of crisis. She felt like you had the city under control, all the departments, all the programs pretty much under control, and she felt really at ease. And I thought that was a great compliment to you and all the names on this report here, CFO Connor Baldwin, Allison, and Carol Keefe. And when they compliment to you like that, when they feel safe, they feel normal, that was also a compliment to all of us city council members as well as elected officials. We feel good about that because at the end of the day, really, those are the people that we report to and you report to, and you have done a fantastic job. And to get a compliment from a resident, from a member of the community like that, I think that says it all. So thank you so much and great job.
Thank you. Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Madam Manager, you do a great job looking to partner with others when they need to, and looking for new revenue to fix our municipal building and do all those things, and also looking for grant like MSBA to fix our school, as you indicated, $14 million. And you still keep on going, and you build that relationship with the MSBA chairperson. You know, he came and he prayed you, and he prayed the city, despite the loss of revenue because of COVID. You know, you and the team, Connor, Allison, and others, came up with this budget, the budget that includes the creation of a new position, and you heard the people want it. And you know that the audit is, on the way, the report. And you have a feeling, and you want to create this position so that to, kind of getting input and idea from the community. On top of that too is that you heard the last couple meetings we talking about the brownout, the company closing the fire department. You increase to the fire department overtime to address those company closing, which is a great thing. On top of that, Councilor Conway mentioned, you add a grant position, looking forward-looking. This is way that this individual can then maybe working for the time being with Mary Ann from Lowell Police, but eventually she's going to be off on her own, looking for grant from state and federal to support the fire department. On top of that, you didn't forget the kid, because the summer's kid been inside all this time. And again, you look to partner with the school department to make, because they're going to have after-school program. They're going to have, the summer school. So to help put more money into the recreational program. I like it. I like this budget. I like the partnership. I like the thinking that you are doing, and I like everything about this administration. I thank you for the budget, and thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rock?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The budget process, obviously, for some is long and arduous. I know it was for yourself, Madam Manager, and the finance team. The one thing that has been difficult, obviously, during the last year, a year and a half, is the maintenance, the maintaining of the quality of life issues that residents do pay attention to in the city. And I think those issues such as police and fire, trash pickup, snow removal, traffic, and things like that has met the need of the city. And I think that's something to be very proud of, both as an administration and as a city council, on working together. Obviously, there'll be some suggestions going forward on how to improve those areas, and also going forward how to spend the $77 million that's coming to the city. I look forward to those discussions to see what we can improve on, and also what we can hopefully do some long-term fixing of problems that has been in the city for a long time. So all in all, I'm excited about the future of the city. I think we did a good job of maintaining through a very, very difficult time, and hopefully the best is yet to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Drinkwater and then Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my compliments as well to you, Madam Manager, and to the finance team, Connor Baldwin, Allison Chambers, on producing the second budget that occurred during a pandemic, and a balanced budget that maintains services and makes new investments, which might be one of the most significant things in this budget. It's been mentioned, but the additional investments in the fire department, in diversity, equity, inclusion, with the position being included to further those efforts, I think are great highlights. One thing I do just want to ask about, and it ends up being one of the most discussed parts of the budget every year, is the charter school reimbursement. When you look at the chart, it's kind of eye-popping in two ways. One is the additional assessment that we have year over year, about $5 million overall from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. But the reimbursement from the state actually was significantly increased as well. And I know that was, I think, a little bit behind where it was originally scheduled to be through the Student Opportunity Act, which, in addition to Chapter 70 funding, also increased the charter school reimbursements. I think both of those investments were essentially in year one of the Student Opportunity Act rather than year two, where they should be. But I guess I just wanted to ask the increase in the charter school assessment for this year. Is there an explanation for that? Was it more seats being added? Is this something where this particular year was? This particular year is going to be greater than others, or is this the kind of increase we're going to be looking at year over year here on out?
Well, we do know this year, sorry, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor.
no, go ahead.
We do know this year that there were additional grade levels at least one of the schools, one of the charter schools. So that would have been additional students, and that would have resulted in an increase in our assessment. But, for many years, People have been fighting down in Beacon Hill for 100% reimbursement for charter school assessments because you take from the public school system. You know, that's how it's getting funded. And although people who, even those who support charter schools, it's just, we don't want to take it from, especially in the gateway cities where it seems that's where the biggest hit is on charter schools assessments. So if someday we hope we see 100% reimbursement so that it doesn't result in what we're seeing.
It comes up every year, I believe, but, you know, let this be the annual call for 100% reimbursement. We certainly need it. I actually want to, you know, commend the state budget writers for making a significant investment in the reimbursement, which, you know, save for that, we would be, you know, really in a bad position with the assessment for this year. So we did have that to at least somewhat mitigate it, which is good. But one other question I just wanted to ask, this hasn't come up yet, in the message under public safety, it actually includes for the police department goals to implement a body-worn camera program. I know that was being negotiated, was continued from the past collective bargaining negotiations. This is a fairly big policy change that's mentioned here. I just didn't know if there was an update on sort of how and when that kind of program might be implemented this year.
I can tell you, Counselor, it's ongoing on the details. Both, you know, at the collective bargaining agreements that were entered into and approved by the council had language in both for the continued discussion and finalization regarding in and around body cameras. So that has been actively, I know the solicitor's office, my office have been involved with the police department. So we're cautiously optimistic.
Okay. Thank you very much for the couple of clarifications. And again, I think you know, the budget represents a very positive step forward for the city the next fiscal year, and also to be able to separately take up the discussion on the American Rescue Plan funds, not to have to rely on those in the budget, but to take on a process that is inclusive in how we make those investments is very important too. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We heard from all our colleagues that had very good comments, and rightfully so, to the team that put this budget together. I can't say enough how much I admire you, because this is not an easy task. I don't think the public at home knows the work and tedious sweat that goes into this. I just want to pick up this budget and tell you that I'm going to get a hernia to lug it out of here to my car, but this is what we're talking about. And if you think I'm going to read this page to page, but I'm telling you, this is a lot of work. And imagine the paper that went into this for every city councilor. That's half of the budget alone, the paper here. But I want to thank you, because it's not an easy task. And it's not easy to see all kind of problems in the city and try to fairly dish out whatever people need in different departments. Not an easy thing whatsoever. It's like saying, which one of my children do I like the best? You have to give it out the best that you can. And having already looked at the capital plan, I can clearly see that you did the best that you could. So congratulations to this team, Allison, Connor, Kara, and you, Madam Manager. Great job. And here I thought you were all playing solitaire in your office. I know how busy that you have been. Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you. Anybody else? We all went through the thing, so. Nice job, Madam Manager. Anything else?
No, thank you. As I said, this and other things coming up will be taken up at our next meeting on June 8th, and we look forward to further discussion and questions. Although Councilor Mercier's comments reminded me of the phrase, you know, it's as big as the New York City phone book. I don't think they exist anymore, so I'm probably dating myself, but that used to indicate a big volume, but I think it's bigger.
Thank you. Okay, so I need a motion to accept as a report of progress, all the reports and the informational by Councilor Conway, second by Councilor Chow.
Mr. Mayor, aren't we sending this
Sure.
to a public hearing? Or is that another vote coming up to accept it and send it?
The appropriation is going to be sent to a public
All
hearing.
right, sorry.
Thank you. Communications, 6.3, appoint Joe Pine to the Monument Committee. Any discussion?
Move to approve.
Moved to approve by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Drinkwater. Roll call.
Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Drinkwater.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Chow.
Yes.
9 yeas.
6.4, communications, city manager requests 2 out-of-state travel for Lowell Police Department. Any questions? Need a motion to approve by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Chow. Roll call.
Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Drinkwater.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Chow.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
is it possible we could bundle all the votes, 7.1 to 7.13? And when I say this, I don't mean that we just shove it all together. If anybody wants to speak on any of these motions, feel free to do that, but this might help it out a little bit. Thank you.
And I'll just note, Counselor, on that thing, that 2 of these votes are going to be going to a public hearing, and I'll indicate that in the minutes as well.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Elliott?
Well, I don't know if you're going to read the order, but I want to speak on 2 of them.
Sure, that's all right.
Okay, so,
I think the best approach is maybe to have a second to bundle them, take the roll call, and we'll circle back to ones you want to speak
Yeah,
about.
I'll second, that's fine. I just want to make sure I have some
all right,
questions.
motion and bundle by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Elliott to bundle them.
Yeah, you read them. Read each one. Now you read them. We'll take a motion to adopt.
All right, first vote is 7.1, vote appoint interim city auditor Cheryl Wright. 7.2, vote to accept timely receipt of the budget FY '22. 7.3, vote to approve and submit letter to U.S. Economic Division Administration. 7.4, vote to approve the FY '22 Community Preservation Fund budget. 7.5, vote to endorse 5-year capital plan. 7.6, vote FY '22 appropriation order. 7.7, vote to adopt Department of Revenue recommendation. 7.8, vote to accept and expend $7 million Mass Works infrastructure grant. 7.9, vote to apply, accept, expend $2,500,000 Mass Works infrastructure grant. 10, vote to apply and accept and expend $250,000 Housing Choice Program grant. 7.11, vote, apply, accept, expend $79,000 Community Planning Program grant. 7.12, vote to authorize manager execute annual action plan FY '21-22. 7.13, vote special act to fill vacancy on school committee, and that's it. So, motion to adopt by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Samaras. Roll call.
No,
Oh,
Mr. Mayor.
I thought you said vote.
You can do, yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, well, I got to speak before I vote.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Councilor.
Thank you. So I know the capital plan's going to a public hearing, right? So I'm sure there'll be a discussion there, but I just want to let folks know that I support the fact that we're using long-term money, particularly when it comes to this list of items, and it's being funded over a number of years. And to me, they're really imperative, particularly when it comes to traffic signal improvements, when it comes to the paving, as was mentioned. We get a small little piece of money from the state, Chapter 90 money. We do the best we can, but the streets are deplorable. And I guess the follow-up on that is just, and I know we have to do this, gas pipe installation to modernize. but it's making a mess of the city, of some of the streets. And I know we're doing the installation before we're doing the paving, but I just kind of have to get that off my chest. They really don't do a very good job, in my opinion. In some cases, they do. They go from the middle of the road to the end, but that's an aside. But there are also some important things for people to know at home. You know, the bridge at Beaver Brook, I know I filed the motion. I appreciate that being put into the plan, and, you know, many other things. I just think fire department building improvements, we've talked about that for so many times, but at least there's a plan, there's a schedule. We're not doing it all in one fell swoop. So I just wanted to say a couple of words about that. And secondly, the plan. Okay, I wanted to speak on item number 12. And that's the authorize the manager to execute the annual action plan, FY 21-22. If there's no objection, I'd like to refer this to the Finance Subcommittee for this reason. I have a number of questions on some of the expenditures, or I'll say in particular the Downtown Venture Fund. There's $150,000 that's being appropriated, and I know this has been around for some time. I just would like to know what has been successful and what has not been successful. And to me, the block grant funding has always been about bricks and mortar, and I want to kind of get. It seems like some of these projects, and they're all good projects, don't get me wrong. I'd just like to see the reports from some of these things, and some of them are, sure, I get it there, you know, the sort of no-brainers that's been around for some time. But even like the sign and facade, that's been around for a long time. How many signs have we done? What have been successful, what is not? So if there's no objection, I don't want to take time. We're trying to bundle these things. We got a longer agenda. So I would like to, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to refer this annual action plan of 2021 to the Finance Subcommittee. And if there's some time urgency to it, then I will hold a meeting immediately. But I think it's good to just find out where we are, what's been successful, where's this money going, and what has been done with not all of them. I understand it's a long report.
I'll second.
7-12.
Right, and quite frankly, I believe that Councilor Conway put a motion in at some point in time to look at where the block grant money is going, what organizations, and what has the money been used for. So I just want to follow up on that. Thank you.
So,
You do a motion to refer it. We'll just take it out of the roll call.
okay. So do it now.
Yeah, it's the second his motion.
So, right, seconded by Councilor Conway, so take 7-12, send it to the Finance Subcommittee.
And Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I got one more. I want to speak on the Cheryl Wright appointment.
All right, do we need?
I'm sorry, Madam Manager.
Just quickly on the Finance Committee, I think it's supposed to be done this fiscal year, but we have the month of June, so.
Okay. We'll
as far
schedule
as
it.
like having a meeting and then come back. So we've got 2 meetings in June to.
Okay, I'll schedule an on and off week as soon as I can. I understand there was some time element to it.
Okay. Do you have one more question, or?
Well, it was just on another item, Mr. Mayor, and that's the Cheryl Wright appointment.
Yep.
So we just hired an auditor, and she's been absent essentially with the exception of a couple of days. I'm going to support this interim appointment of Cheryl Wright. We appreciate her coming back. But moving forward, we can't go into an executive session, as I understand it, to discuss, because it's a personnel, but this is not a personnel matter. This is a performance matter. So I don't know what the step is, but to me, it seems like the individual, there's been some circumstances, I understand. However, it's been a couple of weeks, and we've had nobody in there. So I don't know what the intent of the individual is, but I think that we should have the mayor or the city solicitor reach out to this person and have a conversation as to what the intent is, whether she is qualified and understands the role of the position, what the requirements are. In particular, we're working with Department of Revenue, and then report back to the council, and if necessary, have a special meeting.
Okay. Madam Manager, so that would be appropriate steps then?
This is a council hire, so.
Yeah.
So it may make sense to go ahead and schedule a special meeting for next week with the council. The mayor has been in touch with the auditor and has, in fact, laid out at least some of the concerns from his standpoint. And I think the next step would be to schedule a meeting between the council and the city auditor. And at that point, some of these and other issues can be either addressed or, I think as Councilor Elliott was referring, perhaps there's some other path. But a meeting should be discussed. And if it is the will of the council, I'd be happy to join the mayor in reaching out to the auditor prior to that meeting as well.
I think that makes sense. I'd like to make that in the form of, well, I did make it in the form of a motion, so.
Okay, so motion to reach out to city auditor.
Right.
Seconded by?
And at the same time, schedule a special meeting for
Right,
next
okay.
week.
All right, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Mercia?
Thank you very much. Through you to Madam Manager, this is what's curious to me. So you have a person that barely started and was put on administrative leave with pay, and yet we have another employee, which I know it's personal, was here years and years and years, was put on administrative leave without pay. How do you differentiate who gets paid and who does not? I find that so bizarre.
Without talking about any
I know.
specific case, I can tell you, Counselor, what happens typically if there's a matter under investigation, whether it's an employee who comes under my supervision, they will be typically placed on administrative leave with pay during the investigation, and then depending on the investigation, a determination is made. Sometimes it may be after having been put on administrative leave with pay, a determination may be without pay, or it could be anything from termination, suspension, or without pay. But the standard process is, the process begins with someone being placed during an investigation on paid administrative leave with pay.
This person was placed without pay. I don't.
I can't comment, but that would not happen without a preliminary with pay.
Oh, I see. Okay then, thank you.
Councilor Rourke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to appointing Ms. Wright for the auditor's position again, is she on borrowed time since she's a retired employee of the city, and she can only make a certain percentage without going
Actually,
over?
during this, you can speak to it, but I do know as far as retirees, the exemption as far as the limit was extended throughout this year, this calendar year by the Commonwealth, so.
Okay, all right, so there's no time crunch?
There typically is, except during COVID, in the order that the governor and I believe the legislature extended a period where there isn't a cap for 2021.
Oh, great, thank you.
Councilor Elliott?
Well, and I just want the people at home to also know there is an order also here that I'm gonna support, that we're gonna adopt, that is from the Department of Revenue, that places the day-to-day oversight and supervision of the auditor under the city manager, and the city manager can report to the council, because there's no way that an audit can report to 9 members of the city council. So I think that was a good recommendation. In fact, it came in a number of years ago. I think it's important, after long consideration, that we have seen that there needs to be a reporting structure. So just to the people at home saying, okay, well, what are you going to do? What's going to be different moving forward? This order is going to address it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before the vote? So we're all set with the vote?
Yeah, we got to do a
Roll
roll
call?
call, yeah. This is a roll call regarding 7.1 to 7.13, excluding 7.12 for approval. By Council Rourke, seconded by Samaras. Council Chow. Excuse me, Council Conway.
This is
Say
the,
yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Council Drinkwater.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Counselor Noon.
Yes.
Counselor Rourke.
Yes.
Counselor Samaras.
Yes.
And Counselor Chow.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
Now we're on 7:12.
Now we're on 8-1, kid.
Loan orders by city manager, loan order, capital plan, loan order FY '22. Done the thing?
Motion to refer to a public hearing?
Yep, Commissioner waive the full reading, second, all right, I don't have to do that. Okay, motion to, I'm on the wrong one. Motion to refer to a public hearing, June 8th, 2021, at 7 PM by Counsel Elliott, second by Counsel Rourke. Roll call? Yeah, roll call. Ordinance, city manager, ordinance create cybersecurity administrative position and MIS position and salary. Refer to public hearing on June 8th at 7 PM by Councilor Conway, second by Councilor Elliott. Ordinance create grant writer position in fire and establish salary. Refer to motion of refer to public hearing on June 8th, 7 PM by Councilor Chow, second by Councilor Drinkwater. Ordinance create utility engineer position in water and establish salary. Refer to public hearing June 8th at 7 PM by Councilor Samaras, seconded by Councilor Rourke. Resolutions, resolution to make May as Asian Pacific Islander Month. Commissioner waive the full reading, second reading by title and motion, Commonwealth, Massachusetts, City of Lowell, City Council, resolution, City Council of the City of Lowell wishes to go on record to declare the month of May as, in the City of Lowell, as Asian and Pacific Islander Month. Need a motion to adopt by Councilor Chow, second by Councilor Conway, roll call.
Counselor Conway.
Yes.
Counselor Drinkwater.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Counselor Noon.
Yes.
Counselor Rourke.
Yes.
Counselor Samaras.
Yes.
Counselor Chow.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Constable.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make a quick comment on that,
Yep.
if possible. I just want to thank the council body, every councilor here for supporting this resolution. And I want to thank Madam Mayor, Madam Manager, and Solicitor for returning this resolution in a timely manner that was just put forth on the last meeting, and we're still in the month of May, so thank you for respecting the timeline and returning it during this last month of May to honor this resolution. And just a quick note through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Clerk, if you could just change from Asian to Asian American. I think the correct terminology is Asian American Pacific Islander for the final draft. I would appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Chow. I missed that, so thank you. Any other comments? Constable bonds. Communication, City Manager requests approval of constable bonds for Juan Garcia. Need a motion to adopt by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Drinkwater. Roll call.
Counselor Conway.
Yes.
Counselor Drinkwater.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Counselor Noon.
Yes.
Counselor Rourke.
Yes.
Counselor Samaras.
Yes.
Counselor Chow.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Reports, subcommittees. Economic Downtown Development Subcommittee, May 25th. Councilor Elliott, is that yours?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. You're in the first motion. Yeah, so this one and the second motion, the motion really speaks for itself. I know that we voted just a couple of months ago a zoning change for the fourth or the fifth and final phase of the former Julian Steel project. And I know at that point in time, there was concern on the density, the number of units it could be?
Subcommittee report?
This is a subcommittee report,
Oh.
Counselor.
That's what I asked if there were motions. Okay, sorry.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
Okay, well, we'll go to Economic Development Subcommittee then. Sorry about that. This Economic Development Subcommittee met this evening at 5 o'clock to go over the proposed boathouse for crew, they call it crew, I guess, rowing association. I think it's an exciting proposal. I think it's an important step forward to continue to use the river as a resource and expand community programs in rowing. The proposal was presented by Chris Hayes over at Planning and Development. He walked through the process, how we got there, using the open space plan, the recreation plan, talked about the state's outdoor recreation plan. That's currently a piece of land that was in exchange from the Songus Arena when we swapped it with UMass Lowell, or with the state rather. So the proposal currently is to build a boathouse and approximately 70 parking spaces in a property located essentially across from Maycom, or the water treatment plant, next to the boat ramp owned by the Department of Conservation and Recreation. I think it's exciting. It's going to be a combination of a rowing association, a nonprofit, as well as a restaurant, and maybe some other use. There'll be a revenue source, tax revenue source, if that is the case. However, it's a public piece of property. You will go out with the public bid process, and the current appraisal of the property is $926,000. So the city will reap some benefits from that revenue, but also recurring revenue in the future from a developer that'll either lease, create a restaurant and other, or maybe some other retail use. Issues were raised to begin with permitting of the regatta that's in place, potential parking, overflow parking, if you will, knowing that I feel that it's going to be a popular sport or recreation activity, I should say, and I think it's an exciting project. Kudos to Planning and Development for coming up with this, but this is going to be the city land, city developed to a private entity, so it'll be on the tax rolls. Part of it potentially could be leased out to a rowing association, presumably Merrimack River Rowing Association. They've outgrown their current home at the Bellegarde Boathouse, which is owned by UMass Lowell. So that's a report of progress. It's just the first step, if you will, to sort of support the project. Lots of vetting has to be done when it comes to parking, input from the neighborhoods, certainly traffic, and many other issues. But and then the RFP or the proposal will go out with conditions. So that recommendation is from the Economic Development Subcommittee is to support the proposal as presented and move forward to the next step. So that's in the form of a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, and then, all right, Councilor Drinkwine, next report for the zoning subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was a joint meeting of the Housing and Zoning Committees that met earlier tonight. The meeting was attended by Chairman Elliott, who chairs the Zoning Committee, as well as subcommittee members, Councilors Mercier, Chow, and Noon, as well as Councilors Conway and Rourke. The meeting was held in response to a motion that was requested by the joint subcommittees at a previous meeting, asking for a presentation on the changes that were included in the housing choice legislation that recently passed at the state level, as well as provisions in the housing choice law that relate to accessory dwelling units. Presentation was given at the meeting by Eric Slagle, Director of Development Services, and he described some of the changes that were included in the housing choice legislation, which included lowering the vote threshold for certain zoning changes that would be used to produce more housing in communities. For certain zoning changes, they were lowered from a supermajority requirement to a simple majority requirement, and those types of changes would include zoning changes to create multifamily housing zones, mixed-use zones, accessory dwelling units, and the lowering of parking requirements. So that was one aspect of the law that would impact the city, and as well as there was an additional requirement in the law that doesn't relate to all communities, but it does relate to communities served by the MBTA, of which we're one, that requires MBTA communities to have at least one district of a reasonable size in which multifamily housing without age restriction and suitable for families with children is permitted as of right. So Mr. Slagle reported that we're currently reviewing our areas in the within a certain distance of the MBTA, a commuter rail station, to confirm whether or not these the district would be in compliance with the requirements under the housing choice legislation. So we will get a follow-up report on that to make sure that we are in compliance with the zoning regulations under the housing choice law. We further had a discussion just on accessory dwelling units generally. In summary, they are not specifically allowed in the city. They aren't allowed through the current zoning code. There was some discussion about how for families who want to accommodate additional family members living in the home, whether they be elderly family members or potentially younger family members, oftentimes they are able to accommodate through putting an addition on the house, but there are certain nuances where it cannot have an accessory dwelling unit is something that would be considered to have a separate entrance, potentially a locked door in between. So to be in compliance, you would not be able to have those features of an addition. So there was some discussion about whether we would want to potentially create an ordinance that would specifically allow accessory dwelling units under the zoning code. So it was an abbreviated meeting. It's a complicated policy. There's a lot to discuss, and there was a follow-up report requested just to get some more information on, I guess you could say, the nuances between an addition that might be able to help accommodate other family members living in the same household versus what we would need to change in our zoning laws to accommodate accessory dwelling units with separate entrances or more privacy, I guess you could say. So there will be a follow-up meeting when that report is available. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that? Motion to accept the reports and reports of progress by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Chow. All in favor? Petitions?
Motion to bundle the three petitions presented.
Okay, motion by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Noon. The bundle.
13-1 through 13-3.
Yep.
13-4, sorry.
Okay. Property damage, motion to refer to Law Department for report and recommendation. Miscellaneous, Maurice Mason requests installation of overhanging sign at 147 East Merrimack Street. Refer to Law Department for report and recommendation. And Dagavato Neves requests City Council review and update safety measures at crosswalks throughout the city. We send to manager for report and recommendation. Roll call? No, roll call. Yep. 13-3, request installation of communications conduit to provide service from 138 to 160 Middlesex Street. Motion to refer a public hearing on June 8th, 2021 at 7 p.m. by Councilor Drinkwater, second by Councilor Chow. Into City Council motions. First motion tonight, Councilor Elliott requests City Manager obtain and provide a financial report on expenditures, contracts, and work authorized, as well as a report regarding progress to date on Phase 4 of the housing project at River's Edge. Counselor Elliott.
Are we on motions now?
Oh, yeah, second by Counselor
Are we on our reports? No, just
Rainwater.
kidding.
We are on motions. Counselor Elliott.
Thank you, sorry about that earlier. So I understand this is a River's Edge and it's not a city project, so, you know, obtaining this information, we'll probably have to work with the Housing Authority. However, it was at a neighborhood meeting that I was at, that there was a request on the status of it, because I do recall, it was, I thought it was long ago, longer than it was, but it was only several months ago that there was a request that came before the city council to change the zoning on it. So, I guess I'd like to send this motion to the Housing Subcommittee, or perhaps it would be even advisable to, I know there's a number of other motions to follow, but I just think it's important to find out where we are with this project. You know, in the past, has the city contributed money as a good partner, and we want to continue to do a good partner. No concern was raised at that point in time to reduce the density, even by the entity that was looking to finish this Phase 4. So, you know, since such time, I think there's some questions that I think it's important that we have answered. While I understand it as First Residential Development Corp. And in conjunction with the Housing Authority, the city does play a role in zoning and inspection and other aspects of it. So I just think it's important to find out what the status of it is, why there hasn't been progress, what is, you know, what is moving forward. And there's been discussion of this at the Lowell Housing Authority meeting, commissioners meeting in itself. So that's the motion, just to get some information, because the city, I think, inevitably will, as we have been in the past, be a partner. So maybe just, you know, an update as to where we are. I don't know if you want to take up Councilor Noon's motion at the same time, or I think the next one, one of my motions is very similar, but whatever you want.
Yeah, because you're right, Councilor Elliott. Same.
All right, and everyone all set on this motion, 14-1? Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Why don't I'll just shoot down the line.
Sure.
We've got a lot of motions. Motion 14-2, Councilor Elliott requests city manager provide a report regarding the status of the last phase of the housing development by First Residential Development Corporation, seconded by Councilor Noon. Councilor Elliott?
It may make some sense to take up his motion. That's what I was kind of referring to, Mr. Mayor, and that is number 14.9.
14.9, yes.
14-9, yep. Councilor Noon requests city manager asks Lowell Housing Authority for an update regarding the zoning change for the River's Edge development, including final plans and timelines. Seconded by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Noon.
Well, have Councilor Elliott go first, though.
So I spoke on the last one, so I'll defer to Councilor Noon. I just think it kind of coincides. It's just a concern with what's.
I think Councilor Elliott's concern is mine as well. You know, it's rightful concern around the density. But since the zoning change a few months ago, I didn't hear anything. I too was at the South Lowell meeting with Councilor Elliott. That question came up from resident as to what the status of that the last phase of that project. I don't know what happened here. Okay, I'm not sure if there's any permit being pulled either from zoning, conservation, and a number of those from the city. You know, and I know that some work been done, but you know, how did they go about doing it without any permit from the city, without any conservation? And you know, those are some of the concern. I concur that to delve into this, maybe we ought to, you know, get the report and send it to the Housing Subcommittee and to look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. All set with this motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. All right. Are we still on 4-2 or? with the Residential Development Corp., that's all the same one?
It's all the same thing,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, so we're all set.
All right, 14.3, request zoning subcommittee meet regarding changes that have no setback requirements and allow construction to directly abut sidewalks, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Elliott?
I just noticed that there were two registered speakers here, but they're no longer in the meeting, so.
Okay. Sure, Councilor Elliott?
The motion speaks for itself in large part, but here's an example to me of an adjustment that needs to be made in the zoning code. There's been, I did speak to, I brought this issue up, it was several weeks ago, relative to a project that was taking place on Broadway Street, and it's a multifamily unit development. And I noticed that it was built right on the sidewalk. I did speak to Mr. Slagle about it, and he did indicate that there are some zones in the city that allow for a new construction, new building to be built literally right on the sidewalk. And let me just preface by saying, I understand there are some business districts, and this makes sense. That's where the storefront is. You're certainly not going to have a building set back and then a long walkway. However, when it comes to residential zoning, to me, it doesn't make sense. And quite frankly, the neighborhood organization has, and the neighbors are concerned with the project on East Meadow Road and Mammoth Road. Again, both of these projects are in compliance with the zones, the zoning requirements in those particular zones. But I think moving forward, we need to do something about it. It just doesn't, pardon me, there has to be some setback. I mean, just things like snow removal, particularly on Broadway Street, where hundreds of kids are walking down that street to go to school. And then here we have the doorstep is right on the sidewalk. So I just think we can do better when it comes to something like this. And having setbacks is more aesthetically pleasing. I think it's more practical from, literally you have bedroom windows right on the sidewalk, people walking by. It just, to me, when it comes to residential, I believe there's another project going on, going to be built. I did see the posting, the sign, the permit posting right across the street. So I just think we need to adjust that element and have some setback for particularly some of the sidewalks that are not as wide as others in some business corridors. So I'm going to stop there. I'd like to have the zoning subcommittee meet and have a discussion with planning and development. How can we improve it? How can we make it better? I think we can do better when it comes to projects and not putting them right on the sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Councilor Mercia, 14-4. Request city manager have proper department find ways and means to install four-way stop signs at the intersection of 6th Ave and Mount Hope Street, 7th Ave and Mount Hope Street in order to reduce speeding. Seconded by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion is brought forward because of the excessive speeding up 6th and 7th Avenues as they go through Mount Hope Street. Every street along that Pawtucketville neighborhood is a four-way stop, 4th Avenue, 5th Avenue, etc. So that leaves these two streets used as a cut-through to speed up and use it as a speedway. This motion was made as a safety precaution to save a possible life from getting killed. I also know we're lacking a traffic engineer, and that might be a delay in getting this motion done. But my question is, how hard is it to put up signs and change the ordinance? I don't know. I also made a motion like a couple of weeks ago about Corbett Street, very narrow street. I asked that someone from the traffic division go to the neighbors and ask what way do they want it to be one way, and you could clearly see that as I did Subtle Street, which is further down the street, and made that one way, when we actually did have a traffic engineer, and it was done rather quickly. This is the same type of a street, and people are concerned, And I don't know if it's ever gonna get done because of the fact that we don't have a traffic engineer, but I don't know how hard it would be. How would you need a traffic engineer to know if the street should be one way? Ask the people that live on there and just change the ordinance around, just like this particular motion too. So I'm trying to follow them both to see that because of the lack of a traffic engineer, we don't put these two motions in limbo. Do you hear? Yeah, thank you.
We'll certainly look at it, Counselor. I know Alan is able to, has the capability of doing some of it. Some of it is beyond his scope because he's not an engineer, but we're also, again, looking at the situation we're in without a traffic engineer trying to address.
What's the third floor engineer's office? Do they deal with that like Joe Katie and?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. It's a specialty within civil engineering, traffic engineering, and we are trying to find one desperately.
Yeah,
so.
I know. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. 14.5, Councilor Mercy requests city manager inform city council as to providing a policy regarding Juneteenth holiday in terms of city recognition of legal holiday, which would include paid time off as with other legal holidays. Seconded by Councilor Drinkwater. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, this motion is brought forward because many city employees asked me if I knew if the city was going to take part in offering this legal holiday to our city employees and if it will be a paid holiday. The legal day of this holiday is Saturday, June 19th, and city employees were wondering if it is offered, will it be a day like Friday, the day before on June 18th? I was unsure as to what the policy of the city would be, so thus the motion. Do you know the answer, Madam Manager?
Madam Manager.
Thank you, Councilor. I know the law department has looked at this as to what, if any, implication it would have depending on our collective bargaining units. I think the solicitor can address that.
So it's a union issue?
It can be in some instances. It depends on the language of each CBA, but Solicitor O'Connor.
Sure. So having reviewed all of the CBAs, some contain language that would, in fact, upon the passage of a new state holiday, automatically entitle members of that group to that additional holiday. Other union groups do not have that language and would then necessitate bargaining. So we've just started looking at the issue. We'll continue to explore it. But some, as of now, would automatically receive it.
Do we know what people that are onlys, that are not in any union? Because there's some people that...
You mean like ordinance employees?
Yes. How would that be affected if they have no bargaining?
Well, there's an ordinance that covers all of the benefits that ordinance employees are entitled to. We actually didn't check for ordinance employees, but really just the union issues.
Sure, Madam Manager.
So we are looking at this since, we saw your motion, Council, and we are investigating it. There's a couple of things we need to determine, as the solicitor indicated. Under some of the CBAs, that has to be bargained, and it has to be specifically laid out. A couple of them say if the state does it, then they get it. What we tend to do is treat every employee the same way. If there's, obviously, we want consistency. And because this came up, this wasn't actually budgeted in this current fiscal year. We can look to see if, I know the finance department also kind of cost estimated what it would be, and that figure is somewhere around $225,000 for this holiday, and which would be June 19th. This month, of course, is right before the end of the fiscal year. So we're working on this, trying to see what is possible.
Mm-hmm. And when you find out, could you let me know?
Absolutely.
The council know. Thank you.
Yeah, I recognize for where we are right now, it's kind of a crunch time, but we'll see what we can do. We've been looking at it this week.
Well, I just carry their concerns forward, that's all.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. 14-6, Councilor Mercy requests City Manager and Proper Department investigate and report to the City Council the situation on Maple Street concerning a masonry company sifting of dirt and excessive noise. Seconded by Councilor Noon. Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It came to my attention that a problem exists in the area of Maple, Autumn, Montreal Street, where a cement company is sifting dirt and leaving a neighborhood engulfed in a layer of dirt, dust, leaving residents unable to open windows. The dust is so obnoxious and people have been suffering with headaches, dizziness, and burning eyes. This company has taken everything that was once green around them and turned it into either dirt or cement, such as the cement fence replacing the greenery. This company has decreased the value of surrounding property. Who would want to buy a home facing this situation? Is this company sifting dirt that was once known as the contaminated sill resin Superfund dump site that has been dormant for years? Neighbors want to know that. If that scenario is alarming, I forgot to mention the noise, which is especially troubling and even more disturbing at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night. Where is the oversight here? Are we a city that doesn't care it is not in my neighborhood? Every neighborhood and section of this city deserves our complete attention and respect. These people are taxpayers and they pay our salaries, and we owe them more than just ignoring their situation and their unhealthy dilemma. I would expect some improvements, relief, and a full report on what was done to correct their problem. I'm not saying let's get rid of this company. If they're there legally, they're there legally. But they should be more accommodating to the neighbors in the area. So that's the gist of it. And I'm not saying that I'm the only one that got this message. They sent this letter to the whole council through an email in the city hall that.
Thank you, Council.
We'll get you a full report, Councilor. When we did see that email coming from a resident on, I believe, Maple Street, the building commissioner went out immediately, did stop, gave a cease and desist order. They have to get permits, and they didn't have permits to do what they were doing. So that was the case. The other situation that he verbally, and we'll get you the report, said that this was not sill resin, and they were not touching that site, but it was materials that they brought in outside from another site and were grinding up, I guess, to put it, as I understand it. But he did issue a cease and desist to tell them to stop, and I believe they were also, I don't know their order, but moving equipment off the site as well, and they have to apply for permits. But we'll get you a report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion? Councilor Conway, 14-7, request city manager evaluate feasibility of returning to a weekly yard waste pickup during the growing season, July and August. We do have a registered speaker. We'll
need a second to
see what happens here. Second by Councilor Elliott.
Ally Hobbs?
Hi, I'm here because Moses Harris's face.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Conway?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had a few individuals give me a call in regards to the yard waste, and that's why I'm putting this motion on, if through you to the city manager, if you could take a look at this and see about the feasibility of the July and August months, where you would add another 2. So in other words, for the entire year, there'd be a total of 4 additional pickups. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor, say aye. 14.8, Council Conway requests city manager, and DPW commissioner provide an update report regarding the plan to increase surveillance in the Shed Park Polywog Pond area, plan to address illegal dumping in the area, plan to preserve the wildlife in its natural environment, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Conway?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank the DPW Commissioner Christine Clancy for working, her and a team, working very hard in that area, trying to clean things up. There was a lot of dumping in the back of Shed Park, and there were some fences that were put up and gates that really, I think, mitigated the trash problem. And I know a lot of people that walk in that area were very pleased, because it really was getting to be a dumping ground. The other area that people were concerned about was the Polywog Pond area itself, and the fact that there was is Christine Clancy here? Is she on the?
I don't believe she is, Council.
Okay, all right. So I'm wondering if we can get a report on that area of the Polywog Pond area, because of the fact that there seems to be some issues and problems there where individuals, matter of fact, there's 2 very large picnic benches there, and it's not the typical type. It's a lot of like iron to the bottom of it, and I think it's actually attached. And one of those have been ripped up and actually thrown into the pond. And that certainly wasn't done by any 7 or 8 year old, children doing that. That had to be somebody that, trying to be very destructive in that area. The people that walk in that area and spend time there, the concern that they have is to try to protect the environment and the wildlife. And it doesn't seem to be working at this point. So I know we did discuss some possibilities, perhaps signage and cameras, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I know the city solicitor, could you talk about the signage on that?
Sure. I have spoken to Christine Clancy as well on this issue, and she is prepared to give the council a report that will contain some different options of steps that the city can take. Signage would be certainly one of those steps.
Okay, all right. So I look forward to the report, and again, I think that it's very difficult to stop the negative behavior down there, but I think if we have some type of signage and some type of protection, I think that's going to go a long way in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. 14.10, Councilor Samaras, Councilor Noon requests nonprofit organization subcommittee meet to enable local nonprofits to provide input regarding distribution of funds provided by the American Rescue Plan. We have a registered speaker on that?
We do.
It should be a good one.
We'll see.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I think maybe Councilor Ronnie Elliott might want to make the same motion. I don't know, but I have similar motion on 14.16. Request
1413 as well.
Sure, 14.6, and which one?
1413 and 1416.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, is this a legitimate speaker or is this another
think-
protester?
yeah. No, I
I mean,
think-
you know, moving forward, it's unfortunate. I think we've been very successful with having public participation via Zoom and then without any interference. And it's,
Yeah.
is there some way for us to make sure that the people that are speaking are actually legitimate?
Don't have Zoom.
Because I can see this being recurrence moving forward. I hope not, but we don't want to cut the public participation off, but it's become a distraction.
So the registry, Tara Hong?
Oh, yeah, okay. He's a nice human.
So I cannot turn my video, so is that right?
Yep, you're all set.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam City Manager, and the City Council. My name is Tara Hong. I'm a resident of Lowell, living at 22 Canton Street, Lowell, Massachusetts. I'm currently a student, major of political science at UMass Lowell. I'm here today to speak in support of the motion of 1410 by Councilors Mayor and Councilor Nguyen. As a young person in the city, I think it's important to share my voice. I found that the American Rescue Plan, passed by President Biden administration, is one of the most significant plans in our country. Since Lowell, we get almost 70 million in the federal aid from this plan to help the city recover from the pandemic and impact on the people, organization, and infrastructure of Lowell. It's great. I just want to say thank you for all the fantastic work for our city manager and the city council and everyone else that have been working on so hard to help rebuild our economy and our city during the pandemic. This motion of requesting nonprofit organization to meet and provide input regarding this federal fund provided by the American Rescue Plan is a good motion, but it's still not enough for our community. As you may already read the letter from the DEI Consortium of Lowell, we would like to request the city host a public forum to allow community members to provide input on how this federal fund should be spent. It would be conscionable to decide how this public aid should be spent without prospectively on those who have go through all the awful situation during pandemic. This community continues to be deeply affected by COVID-19. Many residents are still losing their job, while others continue to long search for employment. And as you may already know, losing a job means there's no income for their family, which can affect their food security and ability to pay rent or for their health care and etc. If the people in Lowell will offer a public hearing and had the chance to share idea and opinion on this plan, on what the city should do, it would be great for our city and everyone living in the city. In this section, the city will have the opportunity to hear from the diverse population, especially the people of color, that can share area of important to rebuild of their neighborhood and businesses. Again, to be clear, I am not here to speak against the motion. I'm here to speak in favor of the motion. However, I do agree with the DI Consortium of Lowell that we need to have transparent public forum to allow community members to provide input and idea on how this federal relief fund should be spent. Thank you so much for allowing me speaking.
Thank you. Okay, so 1413 by Councilor Samaras requests the city manager provide information regarding how the funds provided by the American Rescue Plan can be distributed, regulations, limitations, seconded by Councilor Rourke, and then 1416 by Councilor Chow requests nonprofit organization subcommittee meet to discuss and review the allowable usage guideline opportunities utilizing the funds to be received by the city from the American Rescue Plan Act. Seconded by Councilor Noon. All right, so we'll start with Councilor Samaras, and then we'll go to Councilor Noon, then Councilor Chow.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion basically, the first motion basically speaks for itself, but There've been a number of people representing the various organizations, nonprofits in the city who've either sent me emails or have called me or I've seen on the street, who've asked that we hold a subcommittee on nonprofits to allow them to come before the subcommittee to be able to provide input into how they'd like to see the funds expended. So it's just an opportunity for the nonprofits. I know the city manager has other plans in mind for getting input, from various members, constituencies in the city as to the spending of these funds. But I think it's important that we offer the nonprofits a time before the subcommittee on nonprofits in this chamber to be able to give their input. And what is tied with this is the request to provide information regarding how the funds provided by the American Rescue League be distributed. The city manager did speak to address some of this as she talked about the budget. But when you talk to people on the street, literally everybody has 1,000 ideas on how this money should be spent, or good, and there are many good suggestions on how the funds can be expended. But I know that the city manager and mayors all over the state have large books on regulations of what they can spend, how they can spend it. Am I correct, Madam Manager?
That's correct, and it's actually ongoing, Counselor, because the interim regulations were produced and circulated about a week ago from the Department of Treasury. There's then a 60-day comment period by cities, towns, people across the country, so those regulations aren't even finalized yet. They gave us kind of an outline of some things, but again, because this is a very long process over several years, we are working together with the state and the federal government to understand fully exactly what's allowed, what isn't allowed. But it is a work in progress from Treasury.
No, thank you. For this aspect, I don't expect every regulation to be provided to us, but I think as you look at it, you can give us an overview of how the money can be spent, and I think this will assist a lot of people who will want to come before us to suggest. But I mean, if it's not in the regs, it's not in the regs. That's it. I mean, we all know that we can't make it up. There's a strict process on how this money to be expended. But the more we know, the better off we are. And also, the first part of the motion, to allow nonprofits to come before us. So if they can be notified that they'll have the opportunity, we'll suggest, also new time, would you think 2 weeks from this point? Or should...
Sure, Madam Manager.
I mean, the reality is we're not going to have regulations in 2 weeks. It doesn't mean we can't begin a process. What is anticipated, stakeholders, which there are many, and nonprofits is one of them. We anticipate over the months and even longer than that to come, we will be organizing stakeholder meetings in outreach. So whatever the council's desire is, I just want to kind of right-size expectations.
I think we should go probably the second meeting.
Well, I mean, I think, just...
The more information we have, the better.
Yeah, but this will be a very long deliberative process that the city's going to engage in. But we need to have input from all of the stakeholders, and that includes nonprofits.
Okay.
So it's a first step. I guess I'm just trying to...
Okay, Mr. Clerk, perhaps the second meeting in June?
Excuse me?
The second meeting in June for the subcommittee to meet on...
Yeah, I don't know if it's available, but it'll be the 25th, I think. I don't have a calendar in front of me, Council.
Okay. If not, contact us. Thank you.
Sure, we'll check. Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand that there is a federal guideline and regulation on how we could spend this American Rescue Act. While we're waiting for the guideline and the regulation on how or what money can be used for, I agree with Councilor Samaras that it's a good idea to invite nonprofit, and having the nonprofit subcommittee meet to get input and idea from those nonprofit leaders. There may be things that the nonprofit leader want to spend money on, but the federal guidelines say no. So, I mean, at least, we hear from, all parties, and then, we can lay out the guidelines and regulations on how those money could be used for or cannot be used for. So it's a good open process. So I like the idea of, the subcommittee on nonprofit meet, when they can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the past few months. I know that you have been meeting with the nonprofit organizations to assist them through this difficult pandemic times. And as we got closer to this date, I know the past few weeks there have been high anxiety and expectations and anticipation of this $60 to $70 million in funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. And because of this anticipation, I know that many of the nonprofits has been asking the nonprofit subcommittee, which I chair, to meet. But as I mentioned to you, Mr. Mayor, and I had the email went out also, that there was really, we couldn't meet before now, just because we did not have any guidance. And I'm not for one to meet and listen and discuss how we can use the money when we had no idea how we can use the money. And that would have been a waste of the valuable times that many of the nonprofit leaders and individuals and stakeholders that they're living on time as well, because I understand that over the past 14, 15 months, they have been working above and beyond their commitment to our community, to our residents. So I want to make sure that the subcommittee, the nonprofit subcommittee, if we were to meet, it would be productive, and that's why I waited for some kind of guidance from Treasury. And as Madam Manager just mentioned, the Treasury just released, I would say called a preliminary allowable usage guidance about a week and a half ago, and I was fortunate to join other municipal leaders across the Commonwealth to listen in on a presentation on how we can use, and it is very, very broad. I guess the good news is it is broad. It's not as strict as the CARES money. It is broad so that we can use it on a variety of things. It is very complex. You don't have to make a commitment to use the funds until 2024, and you have to use it by 2026. And as I spoke with Madam Manager a few days ago, we don't really know when the money's going to come, but we do have a preliminary idea of what we can use for. And one of the main theme in the allowable usage guidelines is actually what the nonprofit leaders and the stakeholders have been asking for. Can we use it to make sure that it covers the equity, the inclusion, the diversity, the population of our community that are most affected disproportionately. And so that's one of the major theme in the funds that from the American Rescue Plan, or ARP or ARPA, ARPA. Those are good news, and now that we have these preliminary guidelines, and as you know, you have 3 counselors making 3 independent motions. So we've been listening. We've been listening to the nonprofits, we've been listening to stakeholders, we've been listening to the residents, and this is the right time, and that's why the motion is on tonight. And as the previous 2 counselors have mentioned, we would like to have a nonprofit subcommittee to discuss some preliminary guidelines so that the public would know what it's all about. And as we have more meetings, as I get more guidelines, we'll expand the meetings to include other stakeholders, as Madam Manager mentioned, to residents. So we are all in support of that. It's a lot of money. It's going to make a difference to our city, and it's a long term. Again, we have until 2026. It's a process. Thank you so much. I just want to say that we are listening, and we're looking forward to hearing everyone's input. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye. 1411, Councilor Samaras, Councilor Noon requests the city manager instruct proper department to draft a resolution to support Senate Bill 2246, an act to rebuild the Commonwealth's cultural future. Who wants to go first? Councilor Samaras?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is important right now at this particular juncture. This act is to rebuild the Commonwealth's cultural future. From some investigation of this matter, this was to create a $200 million stabilization fund for the state's cultural sector. The money comes from the COVID relief area. Since this pandemic, I believe the state has lost, or the cultural programs in this state have lost over $588 million. So this is only a step to begin. But based on this resolution, it would support the idea of grants that will enable some of the organizations to subsidize their payroll, benefits, pay mortgages, assist in their creative workers, grant work for cultural diversity and equity, economic recovery for tourism. I think this is something that is important. I think Lowell is known very well for its many art districts, and I think that's one group that has suffered quite a bit during this pandemic. Yes, they're able to paint, but the thing is not to be able to demonstrate and show their paintings, their works, and I think this is a type of measure at the state level that we must support to help the cultural activities that go on in this city. I think we all know that many, many people have been very supportive, whether it's the MRT, the different art programs that are in the city, the works of art that are in the city. So this is to put us back on that trail again for success. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councilor Samaras stated, the impact of COVID-19 on families, on business, on art and cultures has been tremendous. And he reported that the art community lost close to $600 million. And this grant, the federal grant, is going to help them in a sense that to address those, not only, the recovery will not only put them back on their feet, but also hopefully make them stronger moving forward. So, when we get the report on this, when we support this, and I would say that, that maybe we send this to the Art and Cultural Subcommittee to have us talk more about it, because this grant is going to come to Lowell, some of them, hopefully, to help our artist community. So, so at some point, if we can just send this report to the Art and Culture Subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments on this? All those in favor say aye. Councilor Samaras requests city manager provide a report on what steps are being taken to ensure all groups in the city understand the importance of receiving vaccinations. Seconded by Councilor Noon. Councilor Samaras.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Manager, I don't think you have to be told that there are still a significant number of people who either refuse to take the test or just haven't found the time to take the test. There's a number of steps that must be done. But I know you've developed programs to encourage this. So I think it would be nice to be able to provide to this council some of those steps. Of course, I was going to make some suggestions, and we know some of the states are doing very well with the lottery, but somebody said you shouldn't do that here because some of us may take the test over again, get another vaccine shot to be part of the lottery. I shouldn't jest about things like that because it's serious. But just think about it. In this country, they've actually offered money to people, lottery chances for people to take the test take the vaccine because it's the right thing to do. But I think in our city there many members of the population who don't have the access that they should or don't understand the process. And I know you're doing a lot of work in this area, so I think it'd be nice for this council to be aware of some of the steps, because everybody's always suggesting ideas. Why don't you do it this way? Why don't you do? I think it's nice for us to know what is taking place. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye. Council Rourke, request City Manager, Human Resource Department, and Council have a discussion concerning the traffic engineer position as well as the consulting firm currently attending the traffic matters within the city. Seconded by Councilor Chow, Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know I speak fast and mumble sometimes, so when I call the motion into the city clerk, I meant to say hire a consulting firm, obviously knowing that we don't have one in the city. So speaking to the motion, we see motions on tonight and every meeting that comes by that deal with traffic issues in the city. There has been an uptick in traffic within the city at all the major intersections and so forth. So knowing the city's position of not having a traffic engineer and the outreach that we have done in order to get one, I would hope that it's time now that we do bring in a consulting firm in to help deal with the traffic issues. I was driving Saturday morning, Bridge Street and the Rourke Bridge and so forth, and traffic was backed up even at 9:30, 10 o'clock a.m., at major thoroughfares throughout the city. So I know it's a little bit of a process, but maybe, with the council's approval, we could bring something forward at the next meeting to help handle the backlog of traffic motions and traffic issues that the city is dealing with at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Conway.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly understand the fact that we have issues here, traffic issues, and I think that bringing in a consultant is basically going to put a Band-Aid on the situation. We're still being faced with looking for something that's much more permanent. I'm wondering whether it might be wise in that might be a good idea with the report is to investigate the possibility of a headhunter that we could bring in and finally get something. Here's a company that specializes in specific areas, and because this is such a unique situation, it might be something that would warrant a headhunter and finally get this taken care of. Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Well, I was going to kind of follow up on what Councilor Conway said. I cannot support bringing on a consultant to answer motions about traffic patterns. If it's a consultant, which sometimes we do, to address a particular intersection or traffic buildup, that makes sense. But there's motions on every week, and I can't imagine hiring someone, just a consultant to answer a motion. Now, if it's to solve a problem, okay. Where are we, Madam Manager, with hiring a traffic engineer?
Madam Manager.
I know we've gone out a few times.
Yeah, we keep going out, and it continues to be a problem, so.
Can I ask you what other communities are doing? I can't presume that we're the only community that doesn't have
I think there's just overall a shortage of traffic engineers with that designation, and there's ample private work right now for traffic engineers. There's so much construction, road work and so forth, and private companies are hiring traffic engineers.
So we're not paying enough, and we have to lure somebody because this problem's not going away.
It's not going away, but it's complicated by the fact that this position is a union position, and other members of the union are all affected. And we continue to look at this and work on this, so and we will explore every avenue to get a permanent traffic engineer here. No question about it, but we can't just unilaterally take a position out of the union. Nor can we unilaterally just change the salary structure for one member of a union. So it's complicated by that. But we will continue to look at every aspect and reach out. There are, we do have the assistant, Alan, who is doing his best to address those things that are kind of routine motions and so that they don't. But some of the ones that are in the backlog are more complicated and are actually, some of them more project-oriented. So to that extent, we'll get a report, whether it makes sense for a cohort of those motions. Obviously we haven't paid the traffic engineer's salary, so there's, currently, money in the budget. And try and get the best of both worlds. As I said, Alan's doing what he can to address those motions that he can do, and then see those larger, more complicated ones. How do we move those? Because it continues to be a challenge. And at the same time, I agree, we need to get a permanent traffic engineer in place.
Okay, and not to get into the specifics of the unions and negotiating and bargaining, but how do we take that position out? I mean, I understand we can't just arbitrarily. You need to go to the union individual or steward and say.
We'll get a report.
Okay,
I'm
all right.
getting
I don't want to get into. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Council Rourke?
Yeah, so, we can, go forward and take a vote on it, or, we can let these things back up and a backlog, and look at, traffic's getting worse. There's nobody, that will deny that. And, I'd rather put a Band-Aid on it for now than let the bleeding continue. So, whether you want to bring something forward, Madam Manager, that does have a traffic consultant, part of this going forward, if we need to vote on that, or if we just want to get a general report. But, it's something that I'm not sure we can let sit too much longer, because it has become a problem again, with vaccinations going forward and more people. We're reopening on May 29th, right, which is this week. So I think you'll see a lot more of this problem, and we're much better off being proactive than reactive. Thank you.
Okay. Any comment, Madam Manager?
We can certainly bring that report and looking at all three aspects, the union side, what a consultant would be this time of the year, what kind of work they would do, and we can get all that back to the council.
All right, good. All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Next motion, Councilor Chatter requests city manager investigate placing a no parking here at a corner sign at the corner of Middlesex Street and Canton. Seconded by Councilor Drinkwater. Councilor Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion speaks for itself. So basically, Middlesex Street is a very busy street, and Canton Street is entering into Middlesex. Very, very difficult to, if I've got this, request from a couple of residents on Canton Street, and it's very difficult for them to enter Middlesex Street because there are vehicles that park up to the corner, and they cannot see oncoming traffic. So that's very dangerous and very difficult on a busy street like that. That's very easy for somebody to take a look at, might be routine. But if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, through you to Madam Manager, this is a coincidence. It's sort of old business, but it's related to this type of motion dealing with traffic safety issues. And it's a coincidence I got called from two different separate issues that we brought up before. And if I could bring it up tonight, so it would save me a phone call to you tomorrow, that'd be great. There was a motion on a no parking here to corner on Wade Street and Chelmsford Street. That was passed over a year ago. And the resident in that area, they happened to call me today, said they have not seen the sign yet. So if somebody can go take a look at that and maybe plan for some, it was passed, it was approved. So if somebody can go take a look at that again. I forgot what date the motion was, the motion response came back, but it was Chelmsford Street and Wade Street. And another one, which was on the corner of Puffer Street and Winthrop. This one, the traffic engineer went to look at it, and the motion request was for a four-way stop sign. There are two stop signs on Winthrop, but there's none on Puffer Street. And the traffic engineer did say that it did not warrant a four-way stop sign. It was not approved. But at the time that they went to look at it, they were thinking that maybe over the summer might be traffic, I guess the number of traffic or vehicles on that street might be different during the summer, and they would go back and look at it again, but at the very least, they might suggest a speed hump on Puffer Street. So that is more like a reminder if somebody could go look at it to see if a speed hump might be an option in that area. That would be great. Thank you so much.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Councilor Drinkwater requests city manager and proper department install four-way stop sign at the intersection of Havilah and Remington Streets. Seconded by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Drinkwater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a resident reach out to me on this issue who lives on the corner of Remington and Havilah Streets. In full disclosure, I live on Remington Street myself. I've always felt that this particular intersection warranted a four-way stop. The only reason I probably hadn't brought it up sooner is that I know several years ago, I believe it was Councilor Kennedy brought up a similar motion, and the intersection was looked at and determined that it didn't meet the criteria at the time for a four-way stop. But what I learned when this particular resident reached out to me is that between then and now, and I think within the last year, he had a vehicle totaled that was parked on the street from a car traveling down Havilah Street. It ended up in his neighbor's yard. So there are speeds coming essentially all the way from it. Street connects Clark and Andover, and cars do drive through particularly fast. The other thing I'll just note from my personal experience driving this way many times is I have the experience of driving down Havilah Street and I stop even though there's not a stop sign, just because it looks like the type of intersection that you shouldn't just drive through, and I notice a lot of other drivers do that as well. You'll be stopped at the stop sign and one car has the right of way and they stop anyway. So I don't know if traffic engineers have a name for this particular phenomenon, but I think it says something when there's that sort of confusion at a particular intersection. So hoping this can get looked at again. Perhaps the data might be different, or the accident in question. I don't know if it would change the way the intersection is evaluated, but at the very least, I think should give it some attention. So all due consideration given to the fact that we are without a traffic engineer, but just wanted to flag this particular issue, and hopefully there's something we can do about it. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. It's called ghost stopping. They termed it in the 1960s, ghost stopping.
Who needs a traffic engineer when we
I forget
have
who
an
it was
expert
at the
on
time, but wasn't. Last motion of the night by myself, request city manager have director of elections attend a city council meeting to present 1, requirements for running city council or school committee, requirement for sitting on an appointed board, and 3, making suggestions on how to ensure these requirements are compiled going forward. Motion seconded by Councilor Rourke. Motion speaks for itself. Motion to adjourn. Madam Manager.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that I know Elliot Veloso has prepared a preliminary report before our next meeting. However, election papers are, candidates can get their election papers on June 1st, and he has a packet of information, including a lot that this motion is requesting. Also, frequently asked questions and so forth. So for potential candidates, I just want people to know before we come back with Mr. Veloso that he's prepared, the election office is prepared to have all that information available on Tuesday, June 1st, as required under the law.
Mr. Mayor, if with all that information from Madam Manager, we want to have an elections redistricting subcommittee on June 2nd, if that makes sense. Mr. Veloso can present there. I know he's very thorough in his presentation, so it may be good to do it at a subcommittee meeting, then wait another week and do it at the city council meeting.
Sure. Okay. So make that informed motion by Councilor Rourke, second by Councilor Elliott. Motion, sure. Councilor Elliott?
Yeah, not on the motion. Madam Manager, is there a plan to send out some type of informational either booklet or communication to every voter in the city, because I can tell you firsthand, people are aware of it in large part, but they do not understand it, and this is after a couple of weeks now of talking to people. And I just think it'd be helpful to every voter that, similar to what the Secretary of State does, just explain what the process, what they can expect, what will trigger a primary in certain districts. I understand it's very complicated to us. You can imagine the average voters who have not really been exposed to have more information. So
we have talked about that and talked about having something sent to every registered voter.
Okay.
So they understand the new system, just as you say, also understand preliminary versus general election. There's also another piece that Attorney Veloso can address, and that has to do with re-precincting required under state and federal law, and without getting too confused.
Yeah, that's going to confuse people more.
It's something that has to be accomplished, but it won't be done by the preliminary because the Secretary of State isn't going to have that information.
Okay.
But we will do our very best to make sure we communicate clearly to everybody in the city in a timely fashion what to expect.
I was going to
as we go
say,
down
is
the
there
road.
any idea when that's going to be published? And can we put a sample ballot? That's the number one question. What is my ballot
I
count?
think what we want to do is make sure people understand what to expect when they go to vote, if they're voting only in a district and at large, and what that looks like as opposed to what traditionally
And
they have been used
will
to.
will we also send out, I know this is a lot, but people, they're tuning in, the summer's going to come, and then will we be sending out a communication where I vote, what precinct? Because those people on the fringe will be confused.
We will, and that still has to be determined in some of the districts. So
Sure.
that's, I know we've been working with the Secretary of State's office on the re-precincting required, not because of our new system, but because of
Population.
Yes, so.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's
Councilor
helpful.
Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Madam Manager, is there any type of plan in place that when you pick up your nomination papers, that you asked that you've lived in that district for a year? And how are we proving that? Are we showing a license? Are we showing a bill?
Attorney O'Connor, if you can answer that.
Sure. They do go through, right now, there are checks in place in terms of attestations, but
Just push your button one more time. I think I ran out.
there it goes. So there are, as I was saying, there are attestations that commissioners rely on now. Obviously, in light of the recent case that we had, where we were then confronted with a lot of documentary evidence to the contrary, we will be looking at what steps we can take to have perhaps an even securer system. Of course, there are methods available to the Election Commission as well, which we haven't utilized in the past, and we really haven't had to. Processes to challenge or to check a voter's registration and whether it's legal or not. So.
And another thing that's very important, I made a motion to raise the voting to 150 signatures, and at the time we did that, it was the old way to vote, and I didn't want to see people just running for office just to see their name on a piece of paper on a ballot. But the fact remains that some of my colleagues made a motion, I don't remember who, to reduce it to 50 because of the districts. I understand that and I accept that, but that never made it to pass in the legislature. So
Not yet. It's a home rule petition that the council passed and was sent to the legislature. It's in committee. but it hasn't gone through the whole process yet.
So I would venture to say they still need 150 signatures.
That's correct.
And I think people should know that when they go to pick up their,
And that's all in the packet that
Okay.
Attorney Veloso. And it's 150 signatures because that's the current state of
Yes.
the law from anywhere in the city, not just a district.
sure, thank you,
Or when I say anywhere, any registered voter in the city.
thank you.
Thank you. Motion adjourned by Council Rourke, seconded by Council Elliott. Thank you.